Good morning, everyone. We are here to start our Blue Earth County Board of Commissioner meetings for January 19th, 2021. Our first order of business will to stand and, who's that? Oh. Okay, our first order of business will to stand and pledge the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Agenda review. Bob, do you have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I have no changes today.
I'll move the agenda review.
Second.
We got a first and a second for the agenda review. Jesse, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Papp?
Yes.
Commissioner People?
Yes.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Yes.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Yes.
Chair Brunder?
Yes. All right, at this time, we are going to move into our County Ditch 35 improvement hearing. Good morning. Our hearing today is a preliminary hearing on the proposed improvements for the lateral to CD 35. The purpose of this hearing is to consider the petition for the drainage project with all matters pertaining to the preliminary survey report. Since most attendees are attending virtually, I would ask anyone that speaks to introduce themselves with their address. We will now hear from the drainage staff and go over the jurisdictional documents. Craig?
Oh, Craig, one moment, please. We're having some sound issues.
Can you hear us, Craig? Nod your head.
I don't know if you can.
Oh. I think we heard him a little
Chuck,
over there,
are you
didn't we?
able to try to speak to see if it's Craig or if it's our end?
Yes, this is Chuck. Can you hear me all
Oh,
right?
Chuck, we
Yeah.
got you.
We can hear you, so it
Alright.
must be something with Craig's end.
Oh, now he's on mute. Still can't hear you, Craig. There, maybe.
No, that's somebody else. If we have the packet up, we could probably say when the mailings were.
Maybe Craig, you could sign off and sign back in. Sometimes that would reconnect, just as a way to try.
Noise is coming from that phone.
Yeah. Do we have the jurisdictional documents here, Jesse? Could we read them into the record, or do we have them?
I think that, I think I can pull up the packet here and say.
Well, Mr. Chair, I can tell you that a hearing notice was mailed to landowners on December 31st of 2020. So those notices were mailed as needed.
Okay. And I would imagine we have to go over the DNR letter, which I understand is relatively long. And we normally read that whole document into the record, so.
Yes, it is a 7-page document. If you'd like, I could begin to read it.
Oh, there we go.
I'm trying to join the County Ditch 35 hearing, and the sound of my computer faded.
Yep, I think we can hear you. Is this David Keller? Now we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're still on. This is the County Ditch 35 public hearing, though, so you're in the right spot. We're having a little technical difficulty with staff trying to get some articles of notification right into the record. So we're trying to get through that. As soon as we get through that, we'll start the hearing.
Bob, one of us could read the letter.
Yeah, I'm trying to locate it here.
Do you want me to send it to you?
If you have it, sure.
Yep.
Oh, there's Craig again. Can you hear us now, Craig?
I think he's going to try to call in with his
Oh,
phone.
he's calling in, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to start reading the DNR report, or you want to wait for Craig?
Yes, I would appreciate that. I think it doesn't matter who reads it, it's just got to be read into record, so.
All right. I want to make sure folks online can hear me speaking. Maybe Chuck, if you could nod, that would, all right?
He
good.
said he's able to hear and see fine.
All right. So this is a letter from the DNR for the preliminary engineers report for proposed improvement of Blue Earth County Ditch 35. Dear Blue Earth County Drainage Authority, thank you for the opportunity to review the proposed Blue Earth County Ditch 35, CD 35. We offer a summary and context of the project as well as comments in accordance with Minnesota Statute 103E.255 on behalf of the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. We have organized our comments to align with this statute, which requires that we identify any additional investigation and evaluation that should be done relating to public waters that may be affected, and environmental, land use, and multi-purpose water management criteria in section 103E.015 subdivision 1 and cite specific portions of the preliminary survey report that are determined inadequate. Under the project summary, this project proposes to address ditch bank erosion and improve drainage capacity in the 3,160 acre Blue Earth CD 35 watershed. According to the preliminary engineer report, the drainage system was originally exclusively tile, but was overlapped with a drainage ditch 4 decades later to improve drainage. Both systems, tile and ditch, are still in place, but the ditch intercepts the tile in several locations. Both the ditch and the tile outlet at the downstream end of the project. The specific actions this project proposes are from upstream to downstream, add branch 8 to the upstream northeast portion of the watershed, increase the capacity in branch 7, enlarge upstream portions of the mainline tile, deepen and enhance the drainage capacity of a portion of the main ditch, replace a portion of the main ditch with a tile while maintaining a smaller channel for overflow, abandon the downstream-most portions of the mainline tile, which will become the responsibility of private users, and improve the outlet to the CD 35 drainage system by increasing the drainage capacity of the receiving water CD 95. 4 options are proposed for the main ditch tile replacement and overflow channel portion of the project. Options 1 through 3 are different sizes of the tile, 60 inches, 48 inches, 72 inches respectively, within the existing ditch plan view, and alternate 4 is a 60-inch tile offset 35 feet E/N from the ditch with a larger capacity overflow channel than options 1 through 3. The project engineer recommends option 4. The option 4 improvement cost, including The road authority cost and damages to the road authority, excluding engineering and legal fees, is approximately $2.04 million, an average of $645 per acre plus legal and engineering costs. Much of the improvement cost is estimated to be offset by avoiding maintenance cost, for example, separable maintenance, and improving crop productivity with a higher drainage coefficient. Next section is titled Context. The project, including the extension into CD 95, outlets into the Maple River, a public water. The Maple River in this area experiences frequent flooding. The Lasua River, the Maple River's outlet, has experienced roughly a doubling of flow over the last 50 years due to artificial draining improvements, crop and land use changes, and increased precipitation events. The Lasua River major watershed has some of the highest sediment and nutrient loadings in the state, partly due to its location in the Minnesota River Nick zone, but largely due to the extreme advancements of unmitigated artificial drainage. The MPCA has identified altered hydrology as the most common stressor within this major watershed. Recommendations for the county are compiled in the Blue Earth County Water Plan. Several recommendations for draining systems and croplands are contained in the plan, including pages 301 through 303's implementation strategies for 103E systems. The One Watershed, One Plan for the Lasua is underway. Because the Lasua River watershed has such high sediment and nutrient contributions, this watershed has been extensively studied, and several groups and entities, including the SWCDs and the Lasua River Watershed Network, a watershed citizens group, is working to improve altered hydrology and overall watershed conditions. Water quality reports are available on the MPCA's Lasua River Watershed webpage. Next section is titled Public Waters, Flooding, Adequacy of Outlet, and Hydraulics. We are concerned that this project will negatively impact the already overburdened Maple River, as it appears that the total drainage capacity of this system and watershed will be increased with this project. Furthermore, several of the options, including the recommended option 4, show modeled increases in flow at the outlet. The PER does not provide enough information to fully understand the changes to the drainage capacity and the potential impact to the public waters. The drainage coefficients, i.e. the drainage capacity for all system components at the terminal end of the CD 35 watershed, pre and post project, need to be included. Specifically, include the drainage coefficients of the ditch, main tile. Even if it will be public, it will terminate at the outlet, so this should be provided. New tile, new overflow path, and any other private tile terminating at the CD 35 outlet. Also include information on how water enters the overflow channel and if potential head cutting has been evaluated in the project or extension, and the total volume per precipitation event. More information should be included about the extension of the outlet into CD 95. Specifically, the narrative and the data should explain the extent and size of physical alterations and how the drainage capacity will change. Since the Maple River frequently already floods in this location, include pertinent details on the ability to drain during the frequent high water events. If modeling is used to substantiate no impacts to the public waters, then sufficient model information should be supplied to assess the model setup and results. This includes the following. Number 1, an encrypted model that can be viewed in XP SWMM Viewer. Number Number 2, all output files. And number 3, a modeling report. The modeling report needs to provide a narrative description and interpretation of the model assumptions, details, and nuances. Detailed model setup and assumptions as well as output should be documented, including but not limited to a map indicating a modeled system and the map locations corresponding to the output data, any changes to the model in the pre and post project scenarios, how the model is routing and storing water, how private tile is or is not incorporated into the model, references for what sources were used for input parameters to the model, how optional modeling methods were selected, for example, infiltration method, how the modeled storm events were determined, including the rainfall depth, distribution, and duration, how the critical storm duration was determined, estimates for the surface runoff, subsurface drainage, and total runoff volume and storage for the design storm events pre and post project, output hydrographs and flooding maps of the pre and post project for the design storm events, and any errors or model discrepancies, including an interpretation and relevance to the project. The project engineer should detail how the adequacy of the outlet determination was made, including that the project does not, number 1, create a loss of function to downstream drainage outlets, and number 2, excessive scour deposition of sediment, and number 3, additional flood damages. Next section is titled Alternative Measures. The reported alternative measures findings are insufficient compared to the full context of the Blue Earth County Water Plan. The water plan lays out extensive strategies to address a number of concerns related to drainage water. Furthermore, other state-level strategies and plans, such as the Minnesota Nutrient Reduction Strategy, are not consulted. In accordance with these plans, additional best management practices should be considered and implemented in this project. Nearly all conservation plans have an underlying foundation, wide-scale adoption of soil health practices. A robust suite of soil health practices, no-till, cover crops, nutrient management, etc., can improve water quality and quantity issues. The additional evaporation and soil holding capacity of live vegetation and healthy soils can help offset drainage problems. The presented options do not include some potential solutions, and no discussion is provided to identify why other options are not considered. Other potential solutions could include 1, increasing long-term storage, for example, wetlands in the watershed to decrease erosive flows. Number 2, reshaping the drainage ditch into a properly designed 2-stage ditch. Or number 3, sloping ditch banks back and stabilizing with improved vegetation. 2-stage ditches have narrow, meandering, low-flow channel within larger, high-flow channel, features designed using geomorphic principles. 2-stage ditches have multiple benefits over standard ditches, including that they, 1, reduce cleanouts due to sediment transport capacity of the low-flow channel. Number 2, improve water quality because of the floodplain vegetation using nutrients. And number 3, initial post-project erosion can be substantially reduced because the total disturbance of the ditch vegetation is reduced. Number 4, 2-stage ditches offer substantially more habitat to aquatic organisms. Additional BMPs to adopt this project can be determined by following 103E.015 subdivision 1A in both the letter and spirit of the law. In particular, that statute states, quote, when planning a drainage project or a repair under section 103E.715, and prior to making an order on the engineer's preliminary survey report for a drainage project or the engineer's report for a repair, the Drainage Authority shall investigate the potential use of external sources of funding to facilitate the purposes indicated in section 103E.011 subdivision 5 and alternate measures in subdivision 1 clause 2. This investigation shall include early coordination with applicable soil and water conservation districts, counties, and watershed districts, water planning authorities about potential external sources of funding and technical assistance for these purposes and alternate measures. We ask that this process be used to inform this report, loop in the watershed and conservation resource groups and agencies working in this area, and ideally identify alternative practices that can create a win-win for the project proposers and the environment. We ask that this work be documented within the preliminary engineer's report and the final engineer's report. Next section is the compatibility and land use. Drainage improvement is compatible with agricultural land uses within the watershed. However, other land uses, including downstream agricultural land, homes, properties, fish and wildlife habitat, wetlands, conservation lands, and other natural resources can be impacted by drainage improvements. While the impact of any one single drainage improvement may be less significant, the cumulative impacts of multiple drainage improvements on downstream land uses become very significant. The Le River watershed has already experienced substantial cumulative drainage impacts, and because of its sensitive geologic and water quality properties, the potential for this project to further compound these problems should not be ignored. Next section is wetlands and shallow groundwater. The PER identifies several potential wetlands, but states that no impacts to wetlands will occur. More information should be included about how an increased drainage capacity and lowering of the ditch bottom will not potentially impact these wetlands, particularly where these wetlands are in close proximity to the lower drainage ditch, i.e. on the upstream portion of the drainage ditch. And because the report also mentions issues with water backing up in this portion of the ditch. If any possibility of wetland impact could occur, the Wetland Conservation Act Technical Evaluation Panel should be engaged to ensure that there are no impacts to the regulated wetlands in this watershed. Historically, the project area likely contains several wetlands. Many of these wetlands were partially drained when the area was first tiled. The little remaining subsoil storage may be eliminated with the proposed drainage improvements. These effects contribute additional flow in the Le Sueur watershed. Ideally, basin or wetland storage should be adopted rather than eliminated in this sub-watershed. The next section is titled Water Quality. The Maple River and further downstream Le Sueur River are impaired for aquatic life and aquatic recreation. The full suite of stressors include altered hydrology, degraded habitat, sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, and possibly more. Increased subsurface drainage has been well documented to increase nitrate and dissolved phosphorus export. Altered hydrology directly impacts aquatic life, but also fuels excessive erosion and habitat degradation. Because this project likely increases some peak flows and total flow volumes, this project will further contribute to poor water quality downstream. Cover crops, nutrient management, two-stage ditches, bioreactors, and/or several other should be implemented to help offset altered hydrology and nutrient impacts. While this project may reduce bank erosion after vegetation establishes, erosion during construction until vegetation establishes will likely be substantial. All efforts should be made to phase work with immediate seeding and erosion control implemented. The DNR standard erosion control is attached and should be followed. The PAR notes that this system feeds the source of drinking water for the city of Fairmont. Is this a copy mistake? Question mark. The next section is fish, wildlife, and sensitive ecological resources. The project has potential to impact fish and wildlife within and downstream of the project. Anytime open channels are removed, potential habitat is removed. Since the downstream rivers are already impaired for aquatic life, this project will add to these impacts. The report states that no endangered plant or animal species are within the project area. Small areas of remnant prairie and threatened plant species are within the CD 35 boundary. The project must work with the DNR to ensure that these areas and plants are not negatively impacted. If the consultant has a NHIS review license, we suggest that the construction footprint be reviewed and the reasoning for no impacts be documented. Wildlife and water quality benefits can be achieved using appropriate native seed mixes. The Board of Water and Soil Resources provides several standard mixes. The next section is the overall environmental impact. The Maple River and the Lusua River watershed are already overburdened by excess drainage water. Without effective mitigation, this project will contribute to higher annual discharge, erosion, sediment, habitat degradation, and water quality impacts. This project does not integrate any mitigating BMPs or long-term storage or work to otherwise improve watershed conditions. Therefore, this project will contribute to degraded water quality, habitat, and general environmental conditions. The next section is conclusion. Overall, this project is just one of several drainage improvement projects that has or is planned to occur within the Lusua River watershed. The cumulative impact of this and other similar projects should not be ignored. This project does little to mitigate the drainage improvements or otherwise improve the watershed. We encourage the Drainage Authority and the project proposers to implement projects and management practices that mitigate altered hydrology and water quality impacts within the watershed. Soil health practices and other BMPs could be used to store and evapotranspirate water from the landscape while also supporting sustainable farmland, healthy watersheds, and rural communities. Cover crops, crop rotations, and residue management could increase soil organic matter and soil water and nutrient holding capacity. These and other practices are detailed in Chapter 5 of the Minnesota Public Drainage Manual. Restoring drained and farmed wetlands would add storage, evapotranspiration, and habitat within the area. All of these practices would help mitigate heavy rains and help store, infiltrate, and evapotranspirate water. If you have additional questions about this letter or would like to set up a meeting to discuss this, please contact Regional Environmental Assessment Ecologist Joanne Betcher and then she provides her email address. This letter is signed sincerely Todd Colander, DNR Southern Regional EWR South District Manager.
Thank you, Bob, for reading that into the record for us today. Is there anybody on the call or on Zoom that is representing the DNR at this point? All right. At this point, we will move down to and hear from the petitioning attorney at this point. Is Bruce on? I think Bruce is representing.
I don't,
Suppose we don't know who's on the phones.
The petitioning representative attorney on the call at this point?
Looks like everybody's muted.
I don't see him on the list. This is Chuck Randall.
Hi, Chuck.
Yeah, I don't see his name yet. He's on the list that I can see.
All right, how about if we just move into your report, Chuck, at this point, and we'll, if Bruce comes on, or if we just can't hear him, maybe he can reach out to somebody and get connected somehow. So, Chuck, I'm gonna let you take the floor and go through your packet.
All right, I've got Joe Donkers with me. He helped me help put the report together. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yep.
So let me know if you can see it.
Yep, we got it.
All right. So we'll go over the preliminary engineer's report for the improvement and the establishment of lateral. I know Commissioner Brunder has seen the ditch. I'm not sure if the other commissioners have seen the ditch, and I know the landowners have. But really and I think that the DNR letter maybe misses this point, the goal of this project is to stop erosion. I think if landowners had their choice, they wouldn't want to do the replacing the bottom of the ditch with a 60-inch pipe. But this system has had extensive erosion over the past 20 years. There's been a lot of dollars spent on trying to fix the erosion in the ditch, and this is actually from this December. But this portion of ditch, we've had issues with the road caving in, the ditch caving in, and have tried pretty much everything to try to fix this. And have had multiple meetings with landowners to go over what should the solution be for this system. Many meetings, many different options, looking at tiling the bottom of the ditch, widening the ditch. What's going on is the soils are very unstable and wet. You have the material that from the original constructed ditch placed here on the right, and it just continually has been sloughing and caving in and restricting the ditch. I believe in a 10-year span, $500,000 was spent on just trying to fix this portion of ditch, and you can see by the video from December that it is still in need of a lot of repair. So the major goal of this is to try to reduce erosion and come up with a solution to stop this continual sloughing, continual caving in of this ditch system. So again, Chuck Randall and Joe Donkers. We did have a landowner meeting last week. I believe we had maybe half a dozen landowners that called in. We went through this report and answered some questions and then got some additional information out. Here are just some of the costs in the 10 years from 2008 to 2018 on trying to fix the erosion in this ditch system. And as you saw from the video, a lot of those areas, a lot of that work has failed just because of the amount of rain we've had, the poor soils, the soil stability. So the goal of this is to try to fix that. We are at the preliminary stage. This is not the final approval of the project. The goal of the preliminary report is to obtain feedback from the landowners and the drainage authority and the agencies, and to check if the project is feasible, practical, cost effective. From the improvement process, pre-November of 2019 into 2018, there were multiple meetings with landowners going over options. Petition was sent in, the board approved that in November of 2019. We did our survey over the winter of 2020, 2021, and completed the report this fall. The existing conditions, the watershed is 3,100 acres. It's a very flat watershed from top to bottom, only 55 feet of fall throughout the watershed. As the DNR letter stated, it was constructed in 1915 and as an all-tile system. The open ditch was constructed in 1957, and then in the last, actually I've been working on this ditch system since 2001, I believe. The last 20 years there's been a lot of instability in the ditch and the side slopes on the ditch system. Here's just a map of the existing watershed. The watershed boundary is shown in red. The dark black lines are public tile. The open ditch is shown in blue. And then the system outlets into CD95. Here's more pictures of the sloughing that is occurring. So, landowners are tired of continually fixing this sloughing and erosion and having their ditch capacity reduced because of it. The capacities of the tile are generally below a half-inch drainage coefficient except for one section. Portions of the tile do not have adequate cover. So the upper end of the watershed is petitioning to replace some tile that only has about 2 feet of cover over it on the east side of Highway 22. That's just as a zoomed in look at that. I did go over this with landowners last week. So jumping to the proposed design, I'll let Joe take over here for a little bit.
As Chuck mentioned earlier, I worked on this report and the design engineer on it. Some of the general criteria we try and hit are 5 feet of cover over the proposed tile, just to make sure that's going to hold up over the next 100 years. We also designed it to be a half-inch drainage coefficient, as well as look at different alternative best management practices such as water quality inlets, and as well as look at the adequacy of the outlet and try not to increase discharge at the outlet. In public crossings, we, for traffic considerations, we choose material based off of cover height and traffic flows. We hit a 1 inch per day drainage coefficient due to the extra surface flow that is going into the ditch. We, for different alternative BMPs, look at alternative side inlets, and we also look at erosion problems and make sure we don't cause any extra issues. This is a proposed watershed map. The red line shows the watershed boundary. The black lines show the existing public tile. The blue line shows the existing open ditch. The magenta line shows the proposed deepening of ditch, which would include 2 separate areas, one for branch CD95 and then as well as CD35. The dark green line shows the proposed tile alignment for options 1, 2, and 3. The red line next to that shows the proposed tile alignment for option 4. The yellow line shows proposed ditch or tile abandonment. And then in the northern side, the green line shows proposed public tile. I'm going to separate this into kind of 2 sections, the northern improvement and southern improvement. The southern improvement includes deepening the outlet to CD35 to gain depth. This would include an extension of the outlet into CD95, which then CD35 would take over.
And just to add in, the southern improvement is the option to try to solve the sloughing problems on the ditch system. So instead of maintaining what we have, the petition was to replace the bottom of the ditch with a pipe and move up the bottom of the ditch to stop the bottom half from eroding.
So as following the petition, we looked at different options of putting tile in the bottom of the ditch. These three options, for options 1, 2, and 3, which would include tile in the bottom of the ditch as well as an overflow surface above that. We then looked at alternative tile next to the ditch, as well as constructing an overflow in the ditch. Then on the northern improvement, this is the same for all 4 options. This would include deepening C35 in order to gain depth for the tile upstream. We would then include installing tile along the main line and branch 7 alignments. The existing tile would then be private header for individual landowners. And then as well, we would install tile on branch 8, which would be an establishment of a new lateral. So here is just the zoomed-in portion of the southern part of the improvement. Once again, the green line is the alignment for options 1, 2, and 3, and the red is option 4. So,
And the green line is what the drone video that you saw follow, starting at this point, coming up from south to north.
and then there'd also be, like previously mentioned, a portion of CD 95 branch 2 that would be deepened, as well as lowering the culvert with the one layer next to it by about 2.5 feet.
One thing to note, the culvert at the outlet of the system would be the same size, a different material, but the same size, and that is to also control the flow out of the system. This project is a balancing act between trying to fix the erosion, matching the existing peak flow, while keeping the capacity of the system. So our goal was to try to match the flows as much as possible.
So here's a planning profile view of the project.
The southern improvement.
This kind of just, if you look at the profile, the bottom portion, it shows the vertical alignment. All 4 options would include installing tile at the same elevations. The main difference between them is the height of the overflow surface.
And one thing to note, we do have an overflow channel. We are putting in a smaller culvert on the very down the southernmost driveway, and that's to help try to match the 50 and 100-year events and protect the 95 system.
So here's kind of a better way to look at the different alternatives. This is a cross-section for option 1 and 4, which are both putting in 60-inch tile. Option 1 would be putting it in the bottom of the ditch, which would include the red line, which show the surface, the overflow surface for that. It's about 40 inches from the top of the pipe to the bottom of the surface, the overflow surface. This is the minimum required cover beam over that tile.
Otherwise, the tile would have the potential to float up.
Then we looked at the last option, we looked at option 4 would be to place the tile next to the ditch. And then because of that, we wouldn't need to have the overflow surface as high, and we kind of set it where we want. That was a balancing act of trying to match peak flows as well as make sure we're covering the main purpose of this project, which is to reduce erosion in the ditch.
So we would take off that spoil that was placed when the ditch was constructed, take that pressure off the system. This is the area that is slumping. We'd be filling that in. Option 4 just allows us to have an overflow. When you take the 60-inch pipe in the overflow, you very closely match the existing capacity of the system, where option 1 would actually incur some flooding on the upper part of the watershed during certain events.
So this shows the proposed tile capacities of options 1, 2, 3, and 4. Options 1 and 4, again, replace the 60-inch tile. These drainage coefficients range from a 0.5 inch per day to a 0.6. Option 2 would be to place a 48-inch tile in the bottom of the ditch, which would have a reduced capacity of about 0.3 inches per day. And then option 3 would be to put a 72-inch concrete tile in the bottom of the ditch. This would have the greatest capacity of about 0.8 to 0.97 inches per day. We will kind of go more in depth of how this actually affects the hydraulics of the of the watershed in the modeling portion. So for that's kind of all on the southern portion. The northern portion would include, once again, deepening a portion of CD95 or 35 in order to gain depth for the tile. As Chuck previously mentioned, there is a pretty flat system, and there's certain spots that only have about 3 feet of cover. So the proposal would include tile on the main line, which would be a 36-inch, which would transition to a 30-inch after the branch 5 outlet. And then it would cross State Highway 22 and transition to a 24-inch after the branch 7. And then it would finish an 18-inch. Branch 7 would be an 18-inch replacement, and it would be replacing a 14-inch. And then the establishment of a new lateral would be branch 8, which would be a 24-inch to go the entire stretch. All of these trying to hit a half-inch drainage coefficient. The main line is pretty, because of how flat it is, we don't have a lot of room to work with the slope. So, yeah.
We are not looking at storage options in this project because with the addition of the pipe in the bottom of the ditch, we're actually closing up a portion of the ditch and we lose a little bit of capacity. So that's why option 4 makes sense to try to match that capacity. So when we ran our model, we're getting very close to the same capacity. That's why we're not proposing storage at this point. We would propose to abandon portions of the system. I'll just quickly go over modeling. We are required to look at the 5, 10, 25-year, and 50-year events. There is a modeling report in the appendix of the report that does have a lot of the information that the DNR asked for. It is in the appendix. So we do have a detailed modeling report. The modeling, there are videos, and we can share our XP swim model with the DNR before the FER. This just shows the timing and the effect of the flows. This is a 4.5-inch rain 10-year event. You can see the improvement on the upper end actually does drain down faster, but the southern portion of the system matches the current capacity. There are detailed flood maps in the report showing how long the water is flooded, the depth of the water, and the flow coming out. This is part of the report. Also, it shows the peak flow rates into the CD95 system. You can see anything shown in blue is a reduction. So option 1, we have reductions except for the 50 and 100-year event where we're trying to closely match. The elevations closely match. We look at option 4. We have a slight increase in the 2-year, decreases in the 5 and 10-year, and then trying to closely match those higher events. We're trying to get it as close as possible to the existing condition to protect the outlet on CD95. And then we also look at the elevations downstream with no significant increases in flooding and actually some reductions in the smaller event downstream. One of the critical points for the landowners is the County Road 29 crossing. So that's where the 60-inch pipe ends. There was concern that we'd be backing up flow. That's why we believe option 4 is the best way to go, because you're reducing the flood elevations on some of the larger events and closely matching the 5 and 10-year, which is where the overflow will come into play. So all of this information is in the report. Construction practices. I know the board's been through many construction projects. We have to have a publicly bid project. We use all of this information to put together our cost estimate. We require that the work is done in 2,500-foot segments, cleaned up, finished. This protects both from an erosion standpoint and from a farmability standpoint that the contractor finishes work in sections. We do have tile investigation included in our cost estimates. We have detailed specifications on tile installation. Again, this shows the differences between option 1 on the top and option 4. We actually will move less material with option 4 because we wouldn't have to cut the, we could, with the pipe on the side, we'd be able to use a little less material and fill in less in the bottom, so we can move a little less material. I did contact the pipe manufacturers, and it actually is less expensive to do option 4 than it would be to option 1 from an installation standpoint, so you'll see that in our cost estimate. I'm just going to skip some of these from timing perspective. But these are things we went over with landowners, some of the construction practices that occur, and pictures of things that with ditch deepening, ditch widening, tile installation, slide slope repair, culvert replacement. It's just good to show that what those things look like during the project. We are proposing a couple alternative side inlets, which is a best management practice. This practice has been funded through GBRBA and the SWCD. So Blue Earth County staff, along with ISG, have been working on all of the projects with the SWCD to get funding for this type of practice. So we will be utilizing that again as part of this project. There are damages on the project, but they all are temporary damages. We will return the top of the ditch to the same point, so there will not be any permanent damages as part of the project. When you look at the costs of the options, option 1 has a total projected cost of about $2.1 million. We went to the smaller 48-inch pipe, which would actually reduce some flow and increase some flooding, which is not the goal of the landowners, but we did look at it as an option. It'd be about $1.7 million. Option 3, if you went to a 72-inch pipe, it'd have to be concrete, greatly increases the project cost. And option 4 is less than option 1. If you use, it's easy, it's a little bit easier to install the 60-inch pipe, and you move a little less material over the top. So it's estimated at $1,950,000. There is separable maintenance for the abandonment of the existing main line that was never abandoned when the open ditch was completed, along with the large amount of maintenance costs needed on the ditch system. The project is very cost effective and feasible, as there's only a net cost of approximately $100,000, which would save, and the amount of maintenance saved in the future, it greatly outweighs that. Just a summary of all the options and all of the costs. Skip over that section. We did look at multi-purpose drainage management as part of the project. Again, it's our opinion that Southern Improvement is all a very large erosion control project to try to reduce the amount of erosion that is occurring on the ditch system. But we did look at other measures, including alternative side inlets. And we did also consider a 2-stage ditch, but because of the highly erosive soils along the ditch area and the very flat grades, we feel that a 2-stage ditch would not be effective. We have had projects in the past where we have had highly erosive soils, and the 2-stage ditch bottoms typically will not hold under those conditions. So that was a comment in the DNR letter, but we didn't mention it in the report because we didn't throw it out right away, but we can include that in the final engineer's report. From a landowner's perspective, most of the watershed could be put into controlled drainage because it is so flat. That is something that is outside of the drainage authority's control, but we did show this to landowners saying that they could put the entire system into controlled drainage. We did highlight some areas where wetlands could be restored. They are not near the improvement area. We have not gotten any feedback from landowners on any of the potential wetlands, but we did highlight those. we read through the DNR letter. I'm just going to cover a couple things real quick. There was a comment that the drainage coefficient needed to be highlighted. It is on page 7 of the report, showing that the outlet has a CD95 has a 5.9 inch per day drainage coefficient. The outlet of CD35 will only have a 1.21 inch per day drainage coefficient, thus significantly less than what the outlet has capacity for downstream. There was a comment on how flow gets into the overflow channel. We have riprap called out on both sides. We have done this practice a few times, including on CD35, and it does hold and it does not cause erosion. There was a comment on the extent and alterations to CD95. The details for this are shown on page 12 and 13 of the plans, which highlight how deep CD95 would be deepened, which is approximately half a foot, except for the last 400 feet where 2 feet would be deepened. And the outlet of CD35 would be deepened by approximately 2.5 feet. All of Appendix F has the modeling information that was requested. We would share our XP swim model with the DNR before the final engineer report. We have done this on other significant projects in southern Minnesota. And I have asked Ms. Joanne Betcher and Tim Giesecke if we could have maybe a quarterly or bi-monthly meeting on improvements to address some of these issues before they get the report. So I have requested that. Based on the extent of the DNR letter for the final engineer report, I'm requesting that we would have a meeting with the DNR and go over all of this information, because most of what they're asking is already in the report. Again, I talked about the two-stage ditch. There was consideration for ditch widening, which was also one of the comments in the DNR letter. This was part of the feasibility study that was done very early on in the project, but was not petitioned. There were some landowners that wanted to do that option, but the petition was for the pipe option, so it was not put into the project. I won't go through the environmental criteria. We do have that, but in conclusion, we feel that the project is cost-effective, practical, feasible, and necessary. We would recommend approval of the preliminary report with the understanding that we will work with the DNR to make sure that we address some of the issues that they have in their comment comment letter. It's a very large project. There's a lot of information. We've had multiple meetings. We spent a lot more time on this, but that's a general overview of the project. Ready for questions at this point.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Very long report. Do I got something going on here? You're good? All right.
Somebody's not muted.
Thank you, Chuck, for that report. This is a very long process. This is a very complicated project. As Chuck said, he's been working on it since 2001, I believe. And to be honest with you, I think it's one of the first projects I went out and looked at when I got on the county board 18 years ago. Craig and I went out there and we were trying to deal with the eroding ditch and the gravel road that was next to it. So it's been a very challenging project for all of us. So good report, Chuck, and good report from the DNR. So at this time, we will open up the public hearing portion of the meeting. This hearing is being recorded, so please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And this could be a little problematic for people trying to call in or trying to testify, so please bear with us. So at this time, would anyone like to comment on County Ditch 35 improvement?
Hello, do you hear me?
We got somebody. Could you please give us your name and address, please?
Yeah, I'll try to put video on. Do you see me?
No.
Nope, not at
But
this
we
point.
can hear you.
We can hear you. What's,
All right. My name is Kyle Vogt, and I'm representing Minnesota Department of Transportation. And I'm basically just commenting on the tile that's going underneath Highway 22.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just here to make a statement that MnDOT contests within the state highway right-of-way the improvement cost that is not explicitly authorized by Minnesota State Statute 103E.525, which states road authorities are responsible for bridges and culverts, but not tile.
Okay,
Chuck or others, so I'd like that recorded, the contest, and I'll give you 2 names you can contact to further this if you need to, but you could call Jared the Master, and he's the acting district hydraulics engineer. Or you can contact Carrie O'Brien, and she's the land management attorney for MnDOT.
all right, thank you, Kyle. So your question is, or you're disputing the fact that the state has to pay for the culvert, or you're just not understanding how much the cost is gonna be?
I'm contesting the improvement costs of the tile going of the new tile going underneath Highway 22. And it's explicitly authorized in state statute 103E.525, which states that the road authorities are not responsible for the tile. They're only responsible for bridges and culverts.
All right. Chuck or Craig, do you want to take a shot at that?
I can address that. In the past, and right now, this is the preliminary report, so there's no assessments being, requested at this point. That'd be part of the final engineer's report. And I gladly meet with MnDOT. But in the past, where you have an all-tile system like this one that crosses Highway 22, the costs, the drainage authorities have been charged for the pipe within their right-of-way. So this is something that has happened on past projects. So MnDOT is essentially, from what I can understand, objecting to that.
Right.
So
this is something you're gonna have to talk to our attorney about. But we're increasing the size. It's an improvement cost. It's not a maintenance cost, and we're going under state statute 103E.525, and from there, you could talk to the attorney or the district hydraulic engineer. I know in the past, we've been letting it slide, I believe, this is something that you need to talk to our attorney about, or start with our district hydraulic engineer. I'm just a senior engineer, so I'm just the initial voice. we deal with this is something that you gotta go to our attorney or our district hydraulic engineer. But it's basically, we're running off of state statute 103E.525, which explicitly states that road authorities are responsible for bridges and culverts, but not tile.
And this is Chuck Randall again. I've been trying to get clarification on this for many years. I think now MnDOT is finally stepping up and stating their opinion. So before the final engineer's report, we will have the result of how the costs work through this. I suggest that we maybe involve the Drainage Authority's attorney just to make sure they comment on it also. So, it has been unclear in the past. The past practice has been to charge road authorities for essentially the boring costs through any paved roads.
Yeah.
All right, thank you both for those comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, for that comment, and we will follow up with that and get back to you or someone on the staff. Okay, at this point, is there other people that would like to comment on County Ditch 35?
Good morning, this is Don Muskowski.
Good morning, Don.
Good morning. I have a few questions regarding the DNR letter.
Oh, Don, could I have your address real quick, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
We live in Mankato, 310 River Park Drive.
Thank you, Don.
And the letter expresses the need for additional information from the engineer to properly evaluate the impact on the project for downstream property. Will that be requested?
I think that is being requested and it will be followed through with Chuck as this moves
Okay.
forward.
Okay.
And we do have all of the information that they're asking for. Some of it is in the report, and we will share our model with them, which has a lot of details of how we looked at the hydraulics. It's a very complicated model, but we have shared that with DNR staff, and they do have staff that's available to review those. So we will do that before the final engineer's report. We only typically do that upon request, and DNR doesn't request it on all projects because of the size of this one. I believe they are. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Chuck.
The letter also points out that this is a risk of downstream property. Is the city of Mankato's downstream, has this project been discussed with them?
Chuck?
Yeah, they typically on drainage systems, we are required to notify everybody within the drainage system and look at the effects downstream. But with the proposed model, and it's our opinion that there will not be significant increases in flooding because we're trying to match the peak flows as closely as possible. Some of the events are slightly below, some of them are slightly above. So we don't anticipate any downstream, additional downstream flooding past this point, which is the outlet of CD35.
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
Go ahead.
Don, go ahead.
Okay. Also, I understand that the landowners and people that are going to be affected by this on the river, have they been talked to, or would you consider directing an environmental assessment worksheet?
This is Chuck again. Based on that this is an existing public ditch system, and it's our opinion, and we've had this reviewed on multiple ditch systems, that EAW or environmental assessment worksheet would not be required for this project. We do cover the environmental criteria in our report that is required under drainage statute. And we've been working with Blue Earth County for many years on trying to match and not increase downstream flooding, because we do understand the issues with the rivers that do come into Mankato and drain in Blue Earth County. So part of the goal is to match those flows. That's a reason why we're actually putting a smaller culvert in, if you can see the map on culvert 2, to try to closely match those peak flows and not push a flooding problem downstream. Again, the goal of this project is to solve erosion through this area. By putting in the 60-inch tile and closing up a portion of the ditch, we're losing some capacity. So we're trying to match that as closely as possible, so we don't decrease the drainage capacity in the system, but not increase flooding downstream.
Thank you, Chuck. Donna, do you have some other questions?
No, just the fact that my wife and I are on the steering committee for the Sword River Watershed Network Group. And usually when we see tile improvements, it means more water entering the river without any retention or any way to slow it down. And people that live on the river are obviously concerned because they're losing land all the time. With the rain flows, with the rain that we've had lately, you know, we had 3 100-year rains already in the last 10 years. So, the last 11 years. So that's what we're concerned about. We want to see some water being held back as opposed to being metered to the river, as opposed to just letting it willy-nilly run in, which has been the practice in the past.
Yep, good comments, Don. We're appreciate you calling in and sharing that with us. And Commissioner People and I have both been on your site. We understand your frustration, and you do have some serious challenges there. So thank you for calling in and moving that forward.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
All right, other questions on County Ditch 35? Anyone else would like to comment on County Ditch 35 at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing any other people trying to get in and comment. So at this time, we will move this issue to the board for some further discussion and action. Questions and comments from the board. Commissioner Strumberg.
Is this a time to move approval?
I think we'd like to have some discussion with the questions we have to talk about.
Okay.
If there's any questions to add, but normally I would ask for that right out of the chute. But I think this has a lot of open issues, a several-page letter from the DNR. So wondering if some commissioners have any particular questions at this point. I am leaning towards continuing the hearing just because of all the information we've seen in the last hour and 15 minutes. But certainly would like to hear from my colleagues or see if there's something they would like clarified from one of the engineers or our staff.
What do you feel can be more clarified?
We need to get through this DNR letter, I think, and deal with some of those issues. I think we need to talk to Chuck in a little bit more detail about the open ditch portion that was not on the petition, but we need to just further that a little bit. And the other challenge that I'm having is that I think there's a lot of people that really like to talk about this ditch system and are having a hard time getting on Zoom or aren't comfortable talking on Zoom. It's a $2 million project. We've been working on it I've been working on it seriously for about 6 years. It's been out there for about 19 years. And I don't see a huge issue to move forward at this point. I don't think we have time to get the viewers. So I certainly think by moving it and just giving us a couple more weeks to give Chuck the green light to move forward would certainly work in our benefit. Commissioner Landcamer?
Mr. Chair, I agree with you. I think there are a lot of questions, and maybe maybe many of the answers are there, but people don't realize what they are right now. So I guess I agree with you, just waiting and getting a little more clarification might be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, and I don't know if the outcome will be a whole lot different. I think option 4 is probably the most feasible on the table, but I think with the era we're in now, it is very difficult to have good meetings and talk about these projects. As I said earlier, this project, we've had meetings over in Mapleton, and we've always gotten 25 or 30 people to participate in this meeting. So it's a meeting, and when we only had 6 on the Zoom meeting the other day, that concerns me. So I just would just soon, if we were up against a tight time frame or something, I might have a different opinion, but at this point, there's really no reason to advance this at this point. So I would like to take the time to to look into it more. Commissioner Pat?
Well, being the commissioner that's 20 years late to the table on this one, it appears like there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of conversations and things like this. I am a little concerned when we've got 7 pages from the DNR on short notice up to this. I think everybody needs to be clear on what the right steps are at the right time. And this is a huge ditch project. And it's one that we don't want to set the precedent of moving too fast and forgetting to get the right questions answered at the right time. I would encourage we continue conversations, but at this point, I really feel that a motion to continue the hearing was in order, and I would make that motion.
I will second that.
Okay, I got a first and a second to continue the hearing. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Strumberg, do you have one other question?
No, I was going to make that motion myself, so I absolutely agree. I just wanted to make sure what the reasons was. You know, I have absolute, you know, ISG has done a great job and has continued to do a good job for us in the past and still are. But the DNR letter does concern me. I just wanted to make sure what the reasons are that we are doing this. And what is the time frame that we should look at? Are we looking at 2 weeks? Are we
We would
looking at a
continue it
month?
to the February 2nd meeting, I believe, at 9 o'clock. It's our next meeting.
Chuck, do you think that you could get the answers within that time period?
Yes, I could, this is Chuck Brandel again, I could put together a memo with responses to all of the DNR concerns. Again, I got the letter Friday afternoon, so, I would also try to set up a call with Mrs. Joanne Betcher to see if we can just talk through some of those things that could be addressed before the final engineering report to make sure they're clear on some of the things they brought up.
Could you also check on with the MnDOT and make sure that concern is taken care of properly?
Yes.
That's
a good point.
Yes, I can do that. I do think that is a larger statewide discussion on crossings, but I've been trying to have that discussion for a couple of years.
All right.
All right, thank you, Chuck. Other discussion, questions?
No.
Okay,
I think-
at this point, I've got a motion on the table to continue our hearing to February 2nd at 9 o'clock. Jesse, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries, and that will conclude our meeting on County Ditch 35 this morning. Everyone that is on the phone, certainly feel free to reach out to county staff, Chuck Brandel, myself. We'll be happy to try to answer any questions or work through this process through the next 2 weeks. So thank you for your participation, and sorry about the technology difficulties, but hope to hear from you if you have some questions and comments. With that, we are just going to take a 5-minute break and regroup with staff and get back in here, so no more than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chuck.
9:25, that's 6.
Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. At this point, we were going to move into our planning and zoning items that we have on our agenda. And looks like Scott is up first to present something.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. PC 27-20 is our first item from the January 6th Planning Commission meeting. The applicant is Solar Club 35 LLC. The property owners are Stephen and Patricia Reedstrom. And the application is for an interim use permit to operate a large solar energy system. The proposed project will have a power capacity of up to 1 megawatt, and it's located in the northwest quarter, the southeast quarter, Section 4, Rapidan Township. At the Planning Commission meeting, staff presented the report. A representative of the applicants was on the meeting and had no additional information, but was available to answer any questions. He did indicate that the conditions in the staff report were acceptable to the applicant. The Planning Commission indicated the applicants provide all the necessary information to allow staff to prepare a comprehensive report, and they commented that it was good to see the new solar standards adopted in 2020 being addressed. And following discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the County Board with the conditions contained in the staff report, and the board action is a resolution.
Thank you, Scott, for that report. At this time, we are going to open it up for public comment. Anybody who would like to speak on PC 27-20 for the Solar Club 35 LLC, please state your name and address for the record. And the first question I'm going to ask is the applicant or the applicant's representative on the call today.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Chuck Beisner, 4974 Interlochen Drive, Alexandria, Minnesota. And again, I have no more to add. The staff did an excellent job, but I'm here to answer any questions anybody might have.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, at this point, I will open up the public hearing again. Anyone wishing to comment on PC 27-20 for the Solar Club 35 LLC, please state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to comment on PC 27-20? Hearing none or seeing none, we will close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the board for action.
I would move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Struenberg. Do I have a second? Pat seconds. Discussion. Okay, Jesse, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Pap?
Yes.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Yes.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Yes.
Chair Brunder?
Yes. Motion carries. All right. Good morning, Garrett.
PC 01-21 was a request for review and approval of a conditional use permit to construct one swine finishing barn / hog buying transfer station. If approved, the applicant will construct one finishing barn capable of housing up to 2,000 head of pigs over 300 pounds for a total of 800 animal units. The facility will include a below barn concrete liquid manure storage area. The facility will house a mixture of finishing pigs and sows. The property is zoned agricultural and is in the northwest quarter of Section 12 Sterling Township. Staff presented the report. Staff also provided 3 letters of opposition to the request. Those 3 letters of opposition had to do with health concerns, air quality, odor from the barns, and decreasing property values. The applicant was linked into the virtual meeting and available for questions. One individual expressed concern in opposition to the proposal, citing health concerns of today's modern farming practices, and opinioned that livestock production methods in the place are not natural. Another individual stated that he and his family farm in the area and their operations include pig barns. He said the proposal has their full support. The Planning Commission sympathized with the neighbors, but acknowledged that the proposal meets the required setbacks, which were increased in 2020. The Commission also indicated that the following construction and operation of these facilities, there seems to be few issues. The Commission stated that the belief that these facilities in today's modern farming practices are cancer-causing is not under the purview of the Planning Commission. Following the discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the County Board with the findings and conditions presented by staff. Mr. Chair, I also received a letter after the planning commission meeting, and I'll just give a brief summary of that. The letter questioned the process for approval. The letter stated it seems that requests like this are approved before they even go to a public hearing. They also questioned why there's a need to provide comments or express concern if none of these are taken into account. The letter writer suggested it only gives the residents a false sense of hope. The board action is the resolution.
Okay, and could you read into the record who the letter was from?
Yes, I will. I have the full letter too, if you'd like me to read it as well.
We probably should, by all means. We didn't get it read into the P&Z meeting, so please do, Garrett.
The letter here is from Joseph and Shirley Massip. They live just to the northeast of the proposal. Gentlemen, it was very interesting watching online the board meeting last night regarding the approval of Joseph and Shirley Massip and Lynch Estate Corporation hog building permit request. I have several comments regarding the meeting and the process that is used to approve the building permits. And I should stop myself there. I said this was from Joseph and Shirley Massip.
Yeah.
That's the applicant. It is from Dennis Albright.
There you go.
I was not surprised by the approval of this hog building permit. My son Tony Albright serves in the legislature at the state capitol, going now on his 5th term. He said, "Dad, don't waste your time in writing a letter or call them. It has already been approved before the meeting ever happens," and he was right. I did not take his advice, and as you know, I put in my 2 cents worth to stop it. What I thought was especially interesting was the way the meeting was handled, with this streaming and zooming thing, which most, at least me, are not into it at all. But I finally did get hooked up. The comments from the board members after the concern letters were read and the call-in comments were completed floored me. Pretty much what each board member said or indicated was we cannot be concerned about the health, heart cancer issues, the smell, the devaluation of property, your personal feelings, the quality of life in the rural area. We must go by the regulations and guidelines that are set by Blue Earth County. If the requested permit is in these guidelines, it is approved. With all due respect, I ask you board members, then why do you ask people living near that hog building location to send in their concerns and make comments, which mean nothing? It is a done deal before the meeting starts. This seems to me a waste of time by your staff to informing all the people in the rural area to respond, and a waste of time for us to do as well. Also, you are not being truthful to the people of Blue Earth County and giving them false hope that if they speak up or become involved, it will make a difference. This procedure is not good and should be changed or clarified. I'm sure that there is a legality involved with all your actions and requests. I have been in the building construction business myself for 60 years, so I have seen it all involving permits, the good and the bad. You guys have a tough job, and I respect your work and service to Blue Earth County. I would not want to be in your shoes making the decisions you are forced to make involving so many people's lives. I've said many times to my children, when things are not going the way you want, you play the cards that you are dealt and make the best of it. That is just what we plan to do with this hog situation, to do what I have to make the best of it. That could involve a move. Respectfully, Dennis Albright.
Thank you, Garrett. All right, at this point, is the applicant on the phone for PC 0121?
Yes, this is Lee Grant, 90550, State Highway 251, Austin, Minnesota 55912, with Lynch Livestock. And I was just going to say Garrett did a good job, and I'm just here to answer questions if anyone has any.
All right, thank you, Lee. At this time, is there anyone else that is on the line that would like to comment on PC 0121 for the Lynch Real Estate Corporation hog operation? Is there anyone on the line that would like, is there anyone on the line that would like to comment on PC 0121, the Lynch Real Estate Corporation hog operation? I'll ask one more time for anyone that would like to testify on PC 0121. Hearing no comment, I'll bring it back to the county board for action.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Pat?
Maybe just a comment. Initially, I guess I'm a little disappointed that people are frustrated or have concerns with the process. I mean, I think we've got a process that's very transparent. Quite frankly, doesn't work as fast as some people I think would like, and always have a concern when people feel like their time has been wasted. I think all of us would agree that without COVID-19, we'd rather have our old process back where we can be face-to-face and have those conversations at least a little with less technology involved, but I think we've all done the best job we can. As you'll hear later, I did participate, listened in on the Planning Commission call and had that ability, but I think that's, we've got a very open and transparent process, and maybe we need to communicate that better to our residents of what's going on, but I think we moved through the right steps as we move through this. Certainly, agriculture is an important part to our entire community, not only to the farmers in the county, but also to the communities and things like that. And whether it be renewable fuels or animal agriculture, those are things we can do to add value to the commodities that we grow in this, and appreciate that opportunity. Sustainability is always the goal of farmers. Probably the most important sustainability, quite frankly, is generational sustainability. And animal agriculture, having animals, when you've got young members of the family trying to get started, it gives them those opportunities to do that. So I appreciate the county's role in adding value to agriculture. I appreciate the hours and hours that were involved with looking at our feedlot ordinance and updating that, getting in line with MPCA and being clear and actually making some changes on setbacks and things like that. So I feel we've got an open, transparent process. We can always do better. Continual improvement should be everyone's goal in life. I understand that. But as it's gone through the Planning Commission and everything else, I believe that this is time to us to approve this, and I would make that motion.
Okay, I got a motion from Commissioner Pat.
I'll second the motion.
Second from Commissioner People. Other comments or questions about the feedlot in general?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Landkamer?
it appears that it fits all of our rules and regulations. It's distressing to me that a sitting legislator would say it's not worth commenting. That's very distressing to me. We want to hear comments. Whether we agree or disagree, we still want to hear what people have to say. So that's distressing to me.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I'm excited that we have another business that's building in Blue Earth County.
Yep. And these are very difficult decisions for us to make as board members, and Commissioner Pat summed it up fairly well, and being from the rural area, I appreciate his input on that. But these are probably one of the biggest things I struggle with when you sit in a meeting and you have people that you know that don't like it, but it fits inside the guidelines, and then when they say we don't listen and we don't care, that's frustrating, but it is a good place to get the information firsthand. That's what the public hearing's for. Yes, you maybe can't change something, but you do get the information firsthand. And we all do have the policies set in place, and we have to follow the policies, and if we don't like the policies, we change them as we go down the road. But that also has its own challenges. So we get these operations that go through this process every now and then, and we work through them. So any other comments? Otherwise, I got a motion and a second on the table. Seeing no other comments, roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landkamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Yes.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations. We will move on to conditional use permit 0221. You're just going to give us a brief update on that?
Yeah, PC 02-21 is a request from Rick and Angela DiMartini for review and approval of an interim use permit application to operate a dog kennel. The proposed kennel will accommodate up to 12 adult dogs and on occasion offer litters of puppies for sale. The property is zoned agricultural and is in the southwest corner of the southwest quarter of Section 20 Decoria Township. The property address is 57370 174th Lane, Good Thunder, Minnesota. Staff presented their report. Following the report and discussion by the commission, applicants, and concerned neighbors, the request was tabled and will resume in the February meeting. There's no board action at this time.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. We'll move on to PC 0321, Blue Earth County. Hi, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PC 03-21 is an application from Blue Earth County for an ordinance amendment to Chapter 24, the zoning chapter of the county code, the general land use standards, as well as the performance standards of the county code to change references from conditional use permits to interim use permits to ensure consistency with conditional uses which were changed to interim uses back in 2020. There's just 14 references in 6 different sections that were changed back in 2020 to interim uses, so that they're the erosion control section, the science section, farm winery, firing ranges, mineral extraction, and then reception and banquet halls. And there just happens to be references in those sections that currently are conditional uses, whereas those main uses were changed to interim uses back in 2020. So we're only changing the reference from the word conditional use to interim use or interim use permit. At the Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission acknowledged the need for the housekeeping update, and following discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward a recommendation for approval of the request to the County Board, and the board action is an ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Scott. At this portion, the applicant is present. We already know that, being Blue Earth County. So if there's anyone that wishes to comment on PC 0321, the Blue Earth County Ordinance Amendment to Chapter 24, please state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to comment on PC 0321 for Blue Earth County? Okay, my last call. If anyone wishing to comment on PC 0321 for Blue Earth County, please state your name and address for the record. Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the County Board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Landcamer. Do I have a second?
People will second it.
Second from Mark. Thank you. Any discussion, questions, or comments? Pretty straightforward, just some bookkeeping stuff. Will you please call the roll, Jesse?
Commissioner Pop?
Yes.
Commissioner People?
Yes.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. We will move on to PC 0421 for Blue Earth County Ordinance to Chapter 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PC 04-21 is another application from Blue Earth County for an ordinance amendment to Chapter 24 of the County Code. This one is to prevent the issuance of permits on properties which have an unresolved or outstanding violation until that violation is resolved. The Shoreline chapter of the County Code has this provision in it currently, and it's been a helpful tool for a county to get compliance with things like junkyards and things of that nature. There just wasn't a corresponding portion in the zoning chapter of the County Code, and it's a provision we thought would be helpful to save staff time and encourage compliance without having to go through an enforcement process with Property Environmental Resources, as well as the county attorney's office and the court system. Just one note on outstanding violations as an example. You know, a junkyard would be an outstanding violation, it meets that definition, but with a property transfer, like for a septic system, property transfers, like where there's a plat or land division, would still be able to go through that process. And if it happened to be a non-compliant septic system, there would be either a 10-month or a 2-year upgrade process, and that would not be considered an outstanding violation. You know, you'd still have that either 10-month or 2-year period. But if we happen to do a permit, 2 years from that time, and that septic system still hadn't been resolved, that would be considered an unresolved or outstanding violation at that point, would need to be upgraded. So we wouldn't issue permits until at that 2-year point. just as a point of clarification. At the Planning Commission noted the need for the amendment and stated that the report was presented well. Following discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the County Board, and the board action is an ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Scott. At this time, is there anyone that would wish to comment on PC 0421, Blue Earth County Ordinance Amendments to Chapter 24?
Hello, Carl Friedrichs here. Can you hear me?
We can, Carl.
Hi,
Thank
Carl.
you for joining us.
Friedrichs Law Office, 624 South 2nd Street, Mankato, Minnesota. This is a concern, I think, for estate planning attorneys more than what they realize. If there is a will out there that transfers a portion of the property, a building site, to one family member and the rest of a rural property to other family members, you have to put in a land division application. If the estate is going to close, we need to get that land division application approved, but the way this reads, if there is a non-compliant condition on the property, the estate can't make the transfer out of the estate to the individuals who are going to inherit the property, who would then have the incentive to do the cleanup or modification of the use of the property. So I think this is going to be more harmful to the county and cause more problems than you think it will be. I understand that if it's simply a well or a septic issue, you will have a year or two to clear up, as Scott has just stated. That's not clearly stated in the ordinance. I would like to have that language specifically added, that there would be time to address septic and well issues. Another problem would occur if there's a business that would want to expand and it has a grandfathered in, say, residence on the second floor of the structure, and they want to add to their building. I think as I read this, they would not be able to add on to their building without eliminating the non-compliant residents, because it's in a zoning district that doesn't allow a residential space, and the business probably likes the residential space there because it's monitoring the site after hours when everyone is home. Third example would be an owner seeking to sell a portion of their property because they don't have the funds available to maintain or deal with the issue that the county has. Again, if they want to come in for the land division ordinance or land division application, as I understand it, they couldn't sell a separate portion of, say, the 40 acres and keep 18 acres so that they could get the money to clear whatever the violation may be on the 18 acres. And I question whether this would apply to an application to rezone a property. Say you've got a property that's light industrial that you would prefer to rezone down to residential because the use is more residential than light industrial. Could you submit the application to rezone so you're not in violation of the light industrial use and convert it down to a residential use? So those are my comments. I think this is going to create more problems than the few instances that are out there that are significant issues. I think the county attorney's office is wise enough to send out letters and deal with people and get enforcement of situations compared to all of the examples similar to what I've given that will cause greater problems for the zoning officials and the residents of the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, for those comments. Scott or other staff, do you have any answers for any of those questions? I know we just received this letter this morning, so this is under very short notice for you guys to respond to this.
Yeah, just on the last one about the rezoning, or we do have a provision at the end of there that applications may be accepted for projects which are intended to mitigate or resolve an existing violation. So if a property happened to be a residential property, but was zoned heavy industrial or something like that, proceeding with that rezoning application would mitigate or resolve that. So that would, what Mr. Friedrich's comment, we view that would help deal with that application. We would accept that application in that case. If there happened to be a violation on the property, like a house or a apartment over a business, With that one, if it was a legally established non-conforming use, meaning it was created before we had any zoning regulations, that would still be able to continue if it met the requirements for non-conforming use. If it happened to be created more recently and would be a violation, then that would be something that we would address, with this, where we wouldn't issue any permits until maybe that house was removed or that use was discontinued. But if it was created before we had the zoning regulations, this provision would not change that at all.
We would honor the grandfather.
Correct, yeah, it would be non-conforming use.
And how about
Is that written down then, that we would do that? I mean,
if it-
just having that understanding is one thing, but it needs to be written down that, no, we will do this.
Yeah, if it, we have a definition for nonconformity, and if it meets that definition, it's considered a legally established use and would be able to remain on that property for, its life.
And then how about when you're transferring for estate reasons? I mean, is there a provision in there that they can still get the ball rolling to transfer it or to clean up a area, or will that, as Carl referred to, will that be a roadblock?
There could be situations where it could be a roadblock, where, you're dividing the property, whether there's a plat or a land division and there happened to be a junkyard on there, there could be a withholding of that land division. It's my understanding that we would, want to see some progress made towards resolving that violation. That's kind of the whole purpose of it. Right. But if the estate, if the property lines are not being changed, that's just not something that we would review or issue a permit for if it matches existing property lines.
Okay. I got some follow-up questions I want to ask Pat in a minute, but I don't want to get too far off base here with the public comment portion of it, so I'm going to open it back up for more public comment. We heard from Carl, but is there anyone else out there that would like to comment on PC 0421 for Blue Earth County? Anyone else there wishing to comment on PC 0421? Okay, hearing none, I will. Oh, go ahead, Carl.
Carl Friedrichs here. I hate to come back in on it, but we had exactly that estate issue on a property south and east of Mankato just at the end of the year, where we had to put in a land division application so that we could carve out a building site for one of the beneficiaries and divide up other parcels of land. If we had not submitted it in time and this was in effect, the estate would not be able to close because the estate does not have the funds available to clean up the situation that is causing concerns for George Leary and the rest of county staff. If the estate doesn't close, by allowing the land division permit to divide it so that the beneficiary gets the carved out building site that needs most of the work done on it, that whole building site winds up collapsing and nothing gets done, the estate doesn't close. I would certainly prefer to see an exception for distributions required from estates and trusts in order that we can get the property to the beneficiaries under the will or the trust. And they can then move forward because they are the living people that then have the desire and the funding to clean up the situation. So I would like to see that exception put into the ordinance.
Yeah, I understand your concern, Carl, but how do we get the situation resolved then if we don't? I mean, you just write a letter saying that the new person will take care of it, or, I think that's kind of what we're trying to get to here, is to make sure the stuff gets taken care of. So I appreciate your comments, but that could be challenging to get the next.
One of the things that could be done is that the land division consent could have the conditions put on it that the new owner will address the situation within 12 to 24 months of taking title to the property, similar to what occurs with the septic system situation that Scott was explaining. That would allow, again, getting transferred to the person that cares about using the property and clearing it up. And I know if the person doesn't do anything within the 12 to 24 months, you have to get the county attorney's office involved and enforce under the terms of the ordinance. And I know the county attorney's office is busy, but if you don't do this exception, you will have property not transferring out of the states staying open, and no one having a desire to do anything with the property because the person that owned it and created the issue on the property is deceased.
All right, thank you, Carl, for those comments. Appreciate that information. So at this time, I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the county board for action and discussion. Questions, comments from my colleagues? I want to weigh in on Pat here a little bit, but I thought I'd ask anybody of the commissioners first, so I'm going to lean on Pat a little bit here at this point.
Yeah.
And just, the goal we're trying to do here is to get properties cleaned up without having to go through a bunch of work, ongoing issues. Do you see something that we could maybe modify it a little bit, Pat, or what are your thoughts?
Well,
Excuse me, Pat, could you turn on your mic? I don't know if your mic is on. Just press it and hold it for a moment, that little button, and it should turn green. There you go. You should be on now. Oh.
Without an in-depth review, it seems to me, Mr. Chair, that if a person in their will or in their estate is creating a problem, they should have addressed it before they died, because the land use ordinances apply regardless. And if we're going to change things just because someone died and give them an exception, I mean, they've created, in my opinion, it would appear they've created this issue in their trust. And now, because they created the issue upon death, they want the county to give some reprieve, whereas if someone were alive and came in and asked for the same thing, it would probably be denied in most circumstances. That's just my general impression of what I'm listening to and what little I've been able to read here.
And thank you for that, Pat. I know that's difficult for you to give us an opinion, but without doing an in-depth research of it, but I appreciate that. Other comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, is this something that we want to take to the second again and just kind of work through that stuff, and Pat can give it more another look?
I don't think there's a real crucial time restraint on this. It's just a bookkeeping thing again.
Yeah.
I appreciate Carl's comments. I would like to hear some more discussion about it, but I'm leaning more towards the ordinance, because again, if we got someone that's got a issue out there and they're not getting it done just because they pass away, shouldn't just forgive that. I mean, it would maybe encourage people to get things cleaned up before these violations, before they have to transfer the rights to someone else or transfer their estate to somebody else. So it kind of goes both ways with me. And we all know it's so difficult to try to get people to do stuff out in the rural area when they're out of compliance. We don't have enough staff. We just don't have enough leverage to get people to do anything. So I certainly don't have any big expectations to get it done today. So other comments? Would someone like to move it and then we could table it? We need to have it on the table before we can table it, so, right?
I'll move to table to
Do we need to-
February 2nd.
Do we need to get a motion first before we can table it?
That would typically be how you want to
Okay.
do that.
So somebody wants to move the PC 0421.
I'll move the PC 04-21.
Okay, do I have a second?
Pap seconds.
Okay, the discussion we already had, we would be having now. So fast forward that to this, and now we would be adequate to have a motion to table if we would like to.
I move to table to February 2nd.
I forgot to do. Thank you. But we'll have to do roll call on the first motion and then the
Okay.
second motion.
Second one first.
Roll call on the PC 0421.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. And now we'll have a roll call on the table.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Carl, for your comments. We will move on now to PC 0521.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PC 0521 is another ordinance amendment to chapter, this time chapter 14, the shoreline chapter of the county code. And this one is to add interim uses, to add standards for forestry management standards, and to add standards for duplexes on natural environment lakes to be consistent with the Minnesota shoreline standards, which are Minnesota Rules Chapter 6120. This ordinance amendment is trying to make those uses consistent with ordinance amendment that was done back in 2020, in August of 2020 for interim uses, so it's trying to make those uses consistent with the zoning chapter of the county code. Our shoreline ordinance had to be reviewed by, the entire shoreline ordinance was reviewed by the DNR because we were making a modification, and they found a couple areas that we didn't have in our ordinance that are in state rules, so that would be the natural environment lakes, the standards for duplexes, as well as the forestry management standards. So we added those sections to be consistent with county code, or excuse me, state rules. At the Planning Commission acknowledged the need for the housekeeping update, and following discussion and roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request to the county board, and the board action is an ordinance.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone from the public that would like to comment on PC 0521 for Blue Earth County Ordinance Chapter 14, please state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to comment on PC 0521 for Blue Earth County, please state your name. Last call for anyone wishing to comment on PC 0521 for Blue Earth County. Hearing no comment, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to County Board for action.
Move to approve.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Pretty straightforward again. Okay. Hearing no discussion, Jesse, you call the roll.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Scott and Garrett, for your reports. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, might I just go back to PC 0421, just on a procedural thing? I believe the board took a vote on this motion or this item, and then you voted to table.
Oh, yeah, we shouldn't have voted for it. Yes, you're right.
Right, and so I'm not quite sure how we kind of go back and maybe clean
I
that
think
up
we
a little
voted
bit.
to table it.
We should have just voted to table.
Table
We shouldn't have
it.
done the
That's what I
first
thought.
vote. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just
We should have had the motion in the second, but we shouldn't have voted on the motion in the second.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
So that and it was voted to be tabled, so the motion for the, should have not existed.
Right.
Right.
That was my fault. I
Yeah.
shouldn't have asked for a roll call on that.
Seemed to make sense.
Pat, how do we
to-
deal with this?
Just make a motion to strike that, and then to simply go with the table.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Pat seconds.
Roll call?
Commissioner Pap?
Yes.
Commissioner People?
Yes.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Yes.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Yes.
Chair Brunder?
Yes. So we're striking the vote on the first
thank you.
motion.
It seemed to
Thank
make
you.
sense.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question going back to environmental services?
Yep.
So when we transfer a property, it doesn't have to be compliant? They have 2 years to do that, is that correct?
It depends on the result of the compliance inspection. It could either be in compliance, or 10 months would be an imminent public health threat that they'd have 10 months to upgrade it, or failure to protect groundwater would be 2 years. So there's really 3 options
Okay.
For the septic system.
for the septic
For
system.
the septic system.
So we don't have anything else in place for the other items.
Correct.
Yeah. I was just incorrectly under the assumption that when they transferred property, it had to be compliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, the requirement is just that a compliance inspection be done upon property transfer itself.
Okay. My other comment is when we talk about the tabled one, I have concerns about 2 years. That's a long time on, getting a junkyard cleaned up or anything like that. Just a comment, that's all I'm saying.
That 2-year part, that just was the example for the septic system
Yeah.
itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, we got human services, Michael out in the office. Just forgot about Michael.
Don't
forget
ever
about
forget
Michael.
about Michael.
We're not done with our department yet,
No,
guys.
we're not.
I
It's just-
guess.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair.
Good morning,
For the
Michael.
record, Mike Stolberger, Director of Property and Environmental Resources. I have 2 items to bring forward here. Tab 3, page 380 of your packet is looking for formal adoption of the Watonwan River Comprehensive Watershed Plan, also known as our One Watershed, One Plan for the Watonwan. This is the final step before we can actually go into implementation of some of the actions that are coming out of the One Watershed, One planning process. The plan itself is a 10-year plan. It contains measurable goals to protect and restore surface water and groundwater quality and quantity. There's education and outreach components as well. Blue Earth County is one of many partner counties and soil and water districts involved in this planning process. As we worked through the process with the group, we did make sure that our priority areas in Blue Earth County were included as local priority issues. And we also made sure that sections and portions of our county water plan were also included as addendums to it to make sure that that and the strength of that plan can still be enforced in conjunction with the Watonwan One Watershed, One plan. This process has been going on for quite some time. Staff has been involved with it since March of 2017. As we've worked through all the public outreach, the public hearings, and working with the other, as I said, partners on the Watonwan One Watershed, One plan, we were able to create a plan that has been approved as of December 17th by the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and that brings it back here. We now have 120 days to actually approve that at the local level for it to take effect. So what we're bringing forward is that actual resolution to adopt and implement that Watonwan River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan, if the board would so choose to do so.
Pat moves the resolution.
People second.
Got a first and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, Carerbra has been involved with it, and of course it's it's legislation in Bowser with it, but we are dealing with then comprehensive watershed plans for each, like the river, in this case the Watonwan River, so they have everybody involved, and of course crosses county lines, so it becomes much more comprehensive, so I think it's a good thing and have it move forward with the plan. So,
thank you, Commissioner. Other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank everybody involved. This isn't easy stuff, and it's complicated and jurisdictional also, so thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, there is a handout in there just to kind of give you a framework of what the planning process looked like, and you can see hundreds of meetings and hours of staff time were dedicated to this. Julie Conrad took a huge lead on this for us, and very proud of her work on it.
Good job. All right, I got a motion and a second. No other discussion. I'll ask for the roll call.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
yes.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Yes.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Yes.
Chair Brunder?
Yes. Motion carries.
All right, Mr. Chair, then moving on to tab 4, page 389. This is the last item for property and environmental resources. What we're looking for the board to do here is consider approving a DNR contract for an electric fish barrier. We have the Aquatic Invasive Species Program implemented in Blue Earth County, and as part of that state aid, we have a prevention plan and guidelines that form our work in that regard. Most of that work is related to our boat inspections, our lake inspections during the summer, but the DNR has asked us to provide a new contribution on an annual basis for annual maintenance of an electric fish barrier. This is east of Eagle Lake, just south of Highway 14 underneath 610 Avenue. And so that was determined to be the proper place for this fish barrier to be located to prevent some invasive species from entering our lakes in the area from the Minnesota River. The DNR has actually already installed the barrier. That was installed in 2018 as part of a project. Another barrier was installed in Waseca County as well. And so what the DNR is asking us for, they've been working with us on this for a little while now, is annual maintenance support, not to exceed $10,000 on an annual basis, as I mentioned. That will be used only for operational costs. You can see listed there electricity, propane, internet service to receive data, as well as an annual inspection to make sure that the barrier is operating efficiently and safely. The term will be for 5 years, however it can be ended with or without cause upon 30 days notice, so there is flexibility built into that. The $10,000 is the maximum outlay, again, for those annual routine operational costs. That $10,000, to put it in a frame of reference for you, is about 8% of the county's annual prevention aid that we receive from the state. 2020, we received just over $118,000. We spend about half of that on our annual inspection program, so we do have some funds available for use, and then the flexibility there to end it if we would need to. So the action being requested is for the board to approve the attached income contract with the State of Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for 5 annual contributions toward routine operational costs of an electric fish barrier.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have a motion to accept the contract?
Also move the resolution here.
Second. Second from Commissioner Stuenberg. Discussion, questions, comments? This is not far from where I live, so I've seen them build it, and it's there. I'm assuming it's working, but very expensive from what I understand to build. I don't remember what the number was, but it was a lot to build it, so.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's an expense there, and so then that's where they look for us to partner on that ongoing operational cost. But yeah, it is in effect, it's in use, and we've had staff going out there just to kind of see what's going on and what that operational cost would look like. So.
Then you can give us some report updates as it goes along.
Sure. Well, it's all part of trying to keep our lakes clean.
So we're talking about electricity and then upkeep of the building and the operation, or, you know. So I imagine if you have an electrical shock, then your electric bill probably would be fairly high. I don't know. You tell me, what's the yearly electric bill for something like that?
Correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I have not seen a full bill yet. It hasn't been in full operation that we could be working off of. The DNR does feel that that $10,000 outlay for the year is going to be a fair partnership on it. I don't believe we're covering all their costs. We're not covering their staff cost or anything like that. This would be just towards the operations of it.
And we are using the funds that the state gives us to take care of stuff, right?
Correct.
So it's not coming directly off from our budget, but what the state already gives us.
Correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We receive just under that $120,000 annually for aquatic invasive species prevention. And so again, about 50% of that went to our lake inspection program. So we have other funds that are building up in reserve for larger projects related to AIS programs, and this would be coming out of that.
Makes perfect sense.
And I would imagine 10,000 doesn't even cover the cost of running that thing a year.
Oh my God, no.
It's not. So,
No, just
other questions?
Mr. Chair, are they planning on additional lakes having this barrier?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Landcamer, I am not aware of it right now. They did the two at the same time to kind of watch these. This one, incredibly, the fish are eventually they're working their way from the Minnesota River all the way over into those lakes there, and so they're trying to figure out where the best place is for it.
Okay.
And this was identified as one early on, as well as the Waseca County project. So I think they're seeing this as an option moving forward, but I'm not aware of any other ones that they're considering in our area right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other discussion? Hearing none, I got a motion and a second. I'll ask for roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
All right, well, we want to move on, or does anybody want to take a quick break, or are we good? Looks like we're good. We'll bring Human Services in. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Phil?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you for hearing us this morning. I do have some action items for the Human Service Department to start off with. First of those, under behavioral health, is a contract we hold with Rice County. This is a renewal contract. We have a position we call the liaison case manager, who helps clients transition in and out of state hospital systems, so Anoka Regional Treatment Center and the community behavioral health hospitals. And Rice was interested in partnering with us for efficiency, so kind of a mini regional effort here to help with that flow through the hospital. We do bill Rice County then at our hourly, what we call a Seeger rate, which is our social worker time cost fully loaded. And the term of this agreement is January 1st of 21 through December 31st of 21. Under financial assistance, an item around our biennial service agreements. So this is one of our larger contracts we have for mandatory work requirements, which are expected as part of our MFIB and diversionary work programs as part of supports for individuals receiving cash assistance and emergency assistance, that they are expected to seek work. And this is that majority resource that we use through MRCI to provide that service. The new agreement is at $634,425, which represents a $48,000 increase from the previous contract. Term of this contract, January 1st of 21 through December 31st of 21.
Mr. Chair, is the work requirements, I know USDA had put some work requirements in just not too long ago. And I wondered, and nobody knows this, the answer.
Okay.
If those will be changed. I think they were challenging for some people, and I just wonder if that, we don't know this, if it will be changed in the future.
Right. And the complexity when we talk about administrative streamlining, Commissioner and Mr. Chair, are one of the issues that we keep talking about. So if it's regarding SNAP work requirements or if it's regarding these two programs, that can also be different. I'm one to advocate to say it'd be nice if we could have similar rules so that not only it's easier to administrate, but it's also easier for the consumers to understand, because they can be different depending on the programs. And right now, I would agree with you that my understanding is we're kind of in a flux with how the dust is going to settle once post-COVID, hopefully.
And USDA would have been SNAP.
Yes, correct.
So,
Yep.
thank you, I appreciate that.
You bet. Moving on to the Mental Health Center, I think the remaining two items are here. The first with Dr. Farnsworth, who's been with us for a long time. In the past year, at some point, he moved to Hawaii, which we've had found that communications really have been more difficult since that move's taken place. We've been in contact with Michael over this time. The contract formally ended at the end of this calendar year. What we are asking for is a 60-day transition period where he had time to meet with his clients, patients, and do a transition however he sees fit. We also have a responsibility as a clinic to make sure that people aren't left without a plan. So it's a concurrent effort to make sure that everybody's taken care of, kind of doubling that importance on that. So this amendment is to extend the existing 2020 contract through February 11th. That is a date that Michael picked. And it would be the same hourly service, the same average number of hours per week, with up to language for an additional $36,650 if that's needed to cover his time and what he does in this time period. So that is the description of that item. And then finally, another bigger contract that we have annually, South Central Community-Based Initiative Fiscal Host Contract. The first part of this is a lot of our core services in mental health. So the mental health services for adults and now some children with regard to crisis services across the entire 10-county region. And then also it supports our case management functions for our staff, clubhouse activities, flex funds, some of the psychiatric pieces, nursing, therapy for our county. And it also then, the second part of this contract serves as the legal document to establish us as the fiscal host, which we've been for a number of years. And so this is a renewal of that agreement as well. Total agreement is $1,8,977.53. This is a 1% decrease. There's some formula-driven changes there, so a very small decrease with this size of a contract. Term January 1st, 21 through December 31st of 21. And that's it for the action items for today.
Thank you, Phil. Do I have a motion to accept the action items today?
Move approval, Langhammer.
Second.
Got a first and a second. Discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none. I'll ask for the roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Now
Mr.
we're on to informational and discussion items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, have 3 items to go over. I'm going to actually beg your pardon and ask to go in reverse order just because Kelly is with us today. We weren't sure of the status given our vaccination clinic, so she's going to provide us the information in that regard. So starting at the bottom, the last item is just, I wanted to follow up our work session recently with one thing I realized we didn't really just give you a ballpark number of what common services are, and so I just felt that was a piece that we kind of missed when we presented to you recently. And so they're just listed here. Therapy, 45 minutes, about $115, and then you see psychiatric, a range between $140 to $150 per session, depending on the service provided. The same type of range for an advanced practice nurse who is also able to prescribe between $120 and $150 per session. And then our Seeger rate, which we talked about in one of the contracts. That is redetermined every quarter, so it's right around $100. And then working backwards, I'm going to actually present these paragraphs because Kelly was good enough to write them up for me, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and then probably do the transition. She can answer your questions because she's much more expert on what this all means. But just to run through these very quickly on the updates regarding the other public health programs. WIC, first of all, provides vouchers to purchase nutritious foods at our grocery stores for pregnant women and children under the age of 5. The caseloads have not decreased since COVID-19 started. Most of our WIC services are provided remotely, and the waiver for in-person visits was just extended again through May. So our practice has been, of course, altered, but we're glad to report that people are still receiving this support as previous. The second program area is Child and Teen Checkup, and this is a protocol of interventions for preventative care for children ages 0 through 21 on medical assistance. Since COVID-19, there has been a threat of significant decrease in the children accessing the preventative care, which include immunizations. So staff have really tried to encourage folks to stay engaged. And part of our mission here is to address additional barriers beyond COVID of limited English proficiency and some of the transportation needs that these families experience just getting to do these appointments that are so important. They also create a linkage between other programs in our department and also to the greater community, which we're very dependent on that collaboration. And again, at this point, the majority of this work is being done by telephone. And then finally, first steps, this partnership between Lyric County, Greater Mankato United Way, Mankato Clinic Foundation serves families with children through age 3 who have risk factors that are identified and listed in the paragraph. Our staff is co-located in the Mankato Clinic, but is able to serve all residents regardless of their provider. And visits, again, are primarily via phone, but we certainly can do in-person visits if needed. The caseload is right around 175 to 180 a year, just to give the board a sense of scope and volume. The large portion, Kelly had this note I found interesting, large portion of the families that go through first steps often don't need to do it on subsequent pregnancies. They learn that piece. And so, I think we've all experienced that, those of us that are parents, where you really don't know what you're doing. And once you do know what you're doing, it becomes a little easier. And so I think that's an interesting finding, just that once people have gone through and kind of learned that, they don't need to relearn it in the future. So there's, I think, a payback on our initial investment. So I'm actually going to go sit down, and if you have any questions on any of these items, please ask Kelly. And she's also going to give us a COVID update.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks.
Good morning, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
So we'll start with any questions on the updates that Phil just provided on the 3 programs.
I don't have any questions.
I have no questions. I just appreciate the updates.
You're welcome. Right, so launching into our response update for this month, for January of 2021. In your packet, there is a collage of pictures. These are snapshots from our clinics that we've held over the last few weeks. The person in the upper left behind the plexiglass is Aaron Hansen. He's one of our newer public health staff members, and he has quickly become an expert in our PrepMod software for scheduling. He and my Amtrak nurse, Patricia Reese, have taken lead on that. The nurse that you see drawing up some vaccine in the lower left-hand corner is Sue Nelson, our public health nurse, and that name is probably familiar to a number of you. And then behind her is Chelsea Hunstead, one of our other public health nurses. And then the remaining pictures are just the setup of the clinic that we have, as well as some of our first responders in the community and saliva testing center staff being vaccinated. Any questions on the pictures in your slides or in your packets?
Pictures are always nice.
Yeah.
I see you got Chris Boyer there.
We do. All right.
Can
So-
I ask a
yes, ma'am.
question just on scheduling, or are you going to get into that?
I would talk a little bit about
Okay,
it.
that's good.
But certainly if there's additional questions when I get done.
Yeah.
It's a new piece to this response compared to previous responses. So over the course of the last few weeks, Blue Earth County Public Health has vaccinated, has moved through that phase 1A, first and second priority groups, and offered first dose vaccinations to our EMS, our registered EMS folks, community testing center staff, community vaccinator staff and support. And with these efforts, have worked through most of those. We've had a couple folks say, I'm interested now, that are in that group, and we have been able to respond to them and provide them updates. At this time, we haven't received notification or communication on additional first doses that we would receive. Assisted living is currently the priority, and I know pharmacies are, all of our assisted livings actually in Blue Earth County are contracted with the pharmacy to provide vaccinations to staff and residents. So that was good news. I think it's important to note that our vials were actually short doses, so we had a number of vials that were a 9-dose vial versus a 10-dose vial. I know we've heard a lot when Pfizer first came out that there was extra doses in a vial. We are not finding extra doses. We're using, each nurse is using the same syringe size, so it's not a supply issue, but something that we weren't expecting but are adjusting to. We also continue to fill out surveys weekly, sometimes a couple of times a week for either the Department of Health or other state partners and our coalition, just to let them know what our needs are through this 1A priority group, and as well as moving into the 1B. We have communicated that we would like assistance with the third priority group. It is a very large group because we're a regional center. Some of the folks in that group include all healthcare workers who have not been vaccinated in the first or second priority groups, which includes all of those who work in hospitals, ambulatory settings, outpatient settings, home health care, emergency shelters, long-term care facilities, dental providers, pharmacies, and mental and behavioral health staff who are unable to work remotely, correctional settings, and group homes. Just as a kind of an example of how large this group can become for us, we have right now 5 different companies listed on a spreadsheet for group homes. Those 5, just those 5, have over 1,000 staff and residents that would need to be vaccinated. There is some conversation that DHS may help with that coordination, but that isn't clear yet. There's a number of questions we're asking to follow up on what exactly does that mean. And then I know a number of you probably were watching the news. The state announced expanded groups over the last week and pilot sites, one of which is in our region. Myself and staff have been fielding calls literally minutes apart, and a lot of us just with questions on how does that fit and how does that work and how is the prioritization happening. So we're working on responding to that and managing that piece. Looking ahead, we're closely following the updates of the Minnesota Department of Health and their partners regarding the future availability of vaccine for our community and the region. So I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mr. Chair, so you got 200 to begin with, is that correct?
We've received a total of 400 first doses. but we were not able to give 400. I believe it was 388 because some of the vials were short doses.
Okay. And just the group homes alone are 1,000?
That was just some of them.
Some of them.
Some of them. We're doing a lot of work this week, reaching out again to those third priority groups to get better estimations, which is quite a task in our county.
And if they're working in a hospital or a clinic, we still have some responsibility for some of those?
Some. The hospitals continue to move through as they receive vaccine, as do, assisted livings and some of our providers, like our healthcare partners also are providers receiving vaccine. But right now, the assisted livings are the priority. So.
And you don't know how many more doses you're going to get in the future?
We do not right now. So there's been some great collaboration between healthcare and ourselves and our community partners. We just aren't able to give them the answers that they're looking for, like timing. When can I expect this? And we're just really not able to answer that question right now.
I listened to the press conference yesterday, and I know the governor said that they get about 60,000 a week, which doesn't go very far when you look at this state.
Other questions for Kelly?
I guess it's somewhat disheartening. We have the staff ready to do the job, and we don't have the vaccine here to do that job. We just noticed that Nicollet County is opening up a place for shots. Are we in that same position that we can start doing that, or we don't? Since we don't know if we're going to get the vaccine, I imagine we're not.
Right now, we can't make plans like that, and that's a collaboration with the state, and it's a pilot project. So there were 9 community sites. Marshall and North Nicollet County were the 2 within our region.
Oh, okay,
of
so
planning.
that had to do with the collaboration with the state of Minnesota.
Right, looking at the 1B group rather than the 1A group. So doing some piloting on how fast can, what's called a throughput, how fast can you vaccinate, how many people in what amount of time.
Mr. Chair, and during the press conference yesterday, they said they were taking 12,000 of the 60,000 to put in those 9 sites. So.
I had heard that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't go very far.
Our throughput rate, so we have looked at how many folks can we move through. So we can move 100 people through in 3 hours with 2 nurses vaccinating.
Oh.
So that's a pretty good rate, given there's a 15-minute wait period.
Yeah.
So it's not like
That's
people
pretty
can
good.
just get vaccinated and move. So we made some adjustments during the clinics, which really helped with our flow. Staff are really good at planning it, doing it, and adjusting right as we're vaccinating.
Mr. Chair, maybe I didn't catch it, but what happens when we finally get more vaccine for the, I guess, more broader groups, once we get through the responders and the rest homes? For those 65 and older, so how does that work? Where do they?
So that's.
I don't know. I don't quite how. I don't get the whole distribution, because what I heard, like Florida has actually, they go car by car through drive-in and I don't know. I just don't get it. But how is that going to work here, or at least in Blue Earth County, or how does that?
So we're meeting with our partners actually over the next week to talk about how will that look for our over 65 population. There's close to 10,000 people that would need to be vaccinated that are 65 and over in our county. So we're still looking at how would that work as partners who, how do we do that? Again, that 15-minute wait period changes up flow and the size of the space that you need. So it's very different than our H1N1 response, where we were able to move slightly over 5,000 people through in 6 hours as a combined partnership. So a little different, just different this time, different aspects to consider.
Right. Thank you.
We're lucky we have that space to space people out.
Yeah. Vance appreciates that too.
But it would be nice if we had 5,000
Yes, thank you,
doses.
Colleen.
I couldn't help myself.
Other questions for Kelly on her report? Very
I just
informative.
appreciate the county
Mhm.
staff doing as much as they can. You know, we can only do what we have the ability to do, and if we don't have the vaccine, we don't have it. You know, we have to make do with what we have. So thanks for all you're doing. Hopefully they can open up the spigot and the vaccine will start pouring out and counties across the United States will start receiving stuff. And it's not just Blue Earth County or the state of Minnesota, it's across the whole United States. And we just need to get these vaccines. Now, they're talking about 2 more places that are gonna have vaccines opening up, 2 different pharmaceutical places, so that should open it up also if they get approved. So we'll see what happens. I mean, hopefully they don't have to be 80 below zero to hold them, you know, so.
Right, that would be a good challenge to have more vaccine.
Yes.
That would be great, and
Well, and one that they're talking about is a one-shot, and it doesn't have to be frozen like the others.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, there's a couple of, in that phase 3
Yeah.
trial, just like Moderna and Pfizer were.
I just saw a report from California that they were asking to hold back on the Moderna because of allergy issues. Have you saw that? I saw that in the news this morning that there was people having an allergic reaction, and they were, state of California was asking them to hold back on certain people, so.
Yep, we monitor that in our, we have a sheet that talks about contraindications, and there's questions we ask just like every other vaccine. And we're ready for that, but the clinics that we have had have all been seamless.
It's great.
All right, thank you very much.
Welcome.
And I just wanted to concur with what the board said, is that public health, of course, are kind of laying themselves down right now, and I appreciate that too. So I just wanted to assure you that they're doing all they can. This volume management of the calls and the complaints, and to be very frank, some of the emotions that come with that are very hard to deal with. So I think it's important that we continue to talk about it. This thing that we're facing right now, and as our elected officials, I know you will hear this as well from constituents, but is all about dosage. I mean, absolutely it is. That's our first, battle line, is we just need more, and we stand ready. That's absolutely true. Then the next wave is, once we start getting it, we're going to have another problem, which is how do we deal with that really big group of people, that 10,000 over 65, and probably another 10,000 of under 65 with comorbid conditions. Then that's going to be a logistics problem again for us, scale and scope. And so Kelly and the team, the community team, is working on trying to make sure we stand ready for that. And then hopefully we'll have both supply and the right throughput to do the big volume. So, I think we're doing all we can. It's incredibly frustrating, and commissioners have captured that just because I think staff stand ready to do what we kind of want to do, and we just need the dosages next, and then we'll go into a logistics issue, and then we'll get back to marrying those two together, and hopefully we'll be off to the races here. So, I'm sorry, just the pressure point of knowing that if we get to that 10,000 group, we're going to need to be sitting on 10,000 doses to satisfy the community, and who gets them and who doesn't. That whole issue that we've all been concerned about since the beginning could probably show up in even a louder tone once that happens, that we're going to get some but not all. I think these pilot clinics, they're piloting the throughput. They're getting a few hundred doses is the way I understand that they're going to push through, just to test how that goes. That's going to create a ripple effect of who got them, who didn't. That it's already hitting the fan, so to speak. So, excuse me.
Just a question. There's been discussion about teachers now that the kids are going back to school. What classification do they fall into?
So education is that 1B group.
It
and
is,
that's
okay.
part of that pilot site.
Okay. I was just curious because I wasn't sure.
Yep, that's where they are. So, and to echo Phil's, thank you so much for all of your support and allowing us to give an update every month. We really appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, make
Thank
sure
you.
Yeah, relay our thanks to your staff. I know when we get reports like this, a lot of times I like to just pop over there and talk to some people and say hi to people, but I have been staying clear because of COVID, but they just still have our support, and after this is over, we will come over and say hi when we are more comfortable or other people are more comfortable with it, so.
That will be wonderful.
Yeah, I think all of us are waiting to see that official tour.
Yeah, we still haven't seen the
of
real
new
building yet.
that's
so-
Some of us
open
got a
for year
pre-tour.
already. It's, you know, it opened up during COVID, and I think we haven't had this official tour yet. So we need to do that and see all our amazing staff over there.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
you.
so much.
All right, we will move on to administrative services, and we got Courtney and Paul on the line yet, but we just got a couple more items to deal with quickly here so we can stay on course. So we'll be to the business assistant program in just a minute. So we'll start with the county board minutes.
Move the minutes.
Half seconds.
Got a first and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Need somebody to pay the bills.
I'll
Move the
move.
bills.
Got a first and a second
I'll
on the
second
bills. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. We have a couple action items on our human resources.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the first two items really are the same, just with different bargaining groups, but we're requesting authorization for the county board chair and myself to sign agreement with AFSCME, our labor unions that represent our human service employees, as well as our courthouse bargaining unit employees. The agreement that we're bringing forward today is a one-year agreement for 2021. It does contain the same general wage adjustment of 2.5% wage adjustment for those employees that we have with other bargaining groups. The other kind of major change to this agreement is the addition of a floating holiday in exchange for a reduction in earned sick leave time. As the board is aware, we have a separate vacation and sick leave banks for our employees, and these bargaining groups pushed hard on receiving a floating holiday, recognizing the board has expressed concern about the amount of leave time that our employees have. We felt was appropriate then to make a reduction when one of those other leave banks to accommodate that request. Other than that, we had some language in our health insurance area, just kind of updating language there and modifying the amount of the HSA contribution that employees receive if they choose the high deductible health plan, increasing that by $50 for single coverage and $100 for family coverage. But I think it would be appropriate if the board is so inclined to take each one of these as a separate action item.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the contract for the human services?
So moved.
Second, Landcamer?
First and a second. Any discussion? Good job getting this put together. Just have to start renegotiating in a year, which always takes a lot of time, but it's part of our program. So keep up the good work. I got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, authorization to do the courthouse contract.
I'll
That
move. I'll second.
Got a first and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the third action item is authorization to initiate recruitment for a probation officer 2 position. This is not a new position necessarily in that we would be adding staff, but rather in our union contract, we do have language there that requires us to have 50% of the probation officers in the PO2 category. We've not had that percentage in place because not all of the PO1s had reached a point where they had the level of experience and education to qualify for that level. We now have staff that have kind of reached a tenure, so to speak, that they are eligible, and so we can get back to that 50% level. So this will be internal recruitment to increase just the number of PO2s rather than adding additional employees to the county.
Langhammer moves.
Do I have a second?
People seconds.
Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Langhammer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. We got a few informational items.
We do have a few informational items, first being the promotion of an assistant county attorney to assistant county attorney 2 with the salary adjustment that goes along with that. We also have filled the environmental health specialist in our wetlands area and the property and environmental resources department. And then we did receive a resignation of a patrol officer and have initiated recruitment to refill that position. And then we've also initiated recruitment to fill the project engineer position in the Public Works Department based on a recent departure there. Be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Any
I
questions?
don't have
on
any
that?
questions, but I wanted to comment and thank Officer Kuzi. I worked with Officer Kuzi as a Mankato police officer back in the day, so he's been here for quite a while. And he's done an amazing job. He did a great job for the city of Mankato when he worked as a patrol officer. He went on to the sheriff's department. He's done a really good job. He's retiring, I understand, and I think that he certainly deserves our thank you for the job that he's done to keep the citizens in Blue Earth County happy.
Mhm. Thank you, Commissioner.
Safe.
All right, if there's nothing else on those items, we will move on to the Business Assistant Grant Program Guidelines. And we've got Courtney and Paul on the phone. Thank you for hanging on our meeting here this morning, but Bob or Josh, who's starting this one?
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll start it out, and certainly their staff and City of Mankato folks certainly can chime in as need to, but item number 9 in your packet is some information about the Business Assistance Grant Program, starting just with some guidelines. And maybe I'll just run through these just to share with the community and the board again. You folks have seen this a couple of times already as we've been working through the development of this grant program, but I think we're at a point now where I believe we've captured all the feedback and guidance from the board and are approaching a point where we believe we're ready to roll this program out. But as the board is aware, we did receive some coronavirus relief funds from the state of Minnesota in the amount of about $1.3 million. We have to have those funds spent by the end of March. Actually, applications have to be received and processed by March 15th. So we have a small window of time here to get this program out and get this money allocated in a way that will help our business community. In terms of the eligible businesses, I'll run down some of those bullet points just to make sure that everyone is clear that it is available, or this program is available for businesses that are for-profit or not-for-profit with a physical establishment within Blue Earth County, and so that's part of the legislation. Nonprofits must be a 501c3, a 501c6, which is limited to just those that are chambers of commerce, and then 501c19 veterans organizations. And I believe that was some of the feedback and discussion that the board had last week at your work session. Businesses cannot have any liens on file with the Minnesota Secretary of State. Again, that is part of the legislation. Businesses must be in compliance with all the state of Minnesota executive orders at the time of the application. We did build in a criteria point that says businesses have to have a minimum of $15,000 in revenue. For newer businesses, we're saying you must have been established prior to July 1st of 2020, kind of recognizing that if a business opened their doors kind of in the middle of the pandemic, it's maybe a little different situation for those businesses. Businesses must demonstrate that they've been adversely affected by executive orders related to COVID-19, and they must be able to show a reduction in revenue of 25% or greater for the fourth quarter of 2020. Now, there is an exception to that, kind of the last bullet there, relative to seasonal businesses that aren't in operation during the fourth quarter. We are providing them the opportunity to provide some narrative information as part of their application in terms of what the impacts of COVID-19 were on their operations. And again, I think that was feedback that the board provided at the work session that has now been incorporated into this process. Newer businesses that have opened between April 1st of 2019 through July 1st of 2020, again, we would look to them to provide some narrative, since the amount of revenue loss there might look a little different depending on the timing of their opening. It's important to note, I think, that grant funds can be used for operational expenses, and we do, right from the legislation, define those operational expenses to include insurance costs, legal fees, payroll, rent, utilities, property taxes, marketing or advertising costs, licensing fees, accounting fees, routine maintenance, travel and vehicle expenses, office supplies, and repairs to existing buildings and equipment. We'd like to get this out as soon as the board is comfortable with us doing so. We did put an application deadline in this material of February 12th at 4 p.m. Unlike our previous program, this will kind of be a one-time application process, and we'll look at where things are at. But given the short time available to us, felt we had to put that kind of hard deadline, and encouraging businesses to apply as soon as possible. We do break down the grant funds into different categories, so we want to have some targeted money to those businesses that were closed by Executive Order 2099. We also want to try and have some of these funds be directed to hospitality type industries and gyms that were obviously impacted by COVID. But we also want to make this available to all of our businesses in Blue Earth County, and so we have those different categories as well as the category for nonprofits. So I think that covers the majority of things, but I'll look to Josh or Courtney or Paul to add anything that maybe is pertinent.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I believe we were able to take the feedback we had last week at the work session to make sure we got that incorporated. Hopefully that piece on the seasonal businesses, I felt this was a clean way to do that with some of those that might not be open in the fourth quarter. That way we're still able to do all our comparisons more apples to apples. So that's why we're looking at that language. So hopefully that's satisfied what the board was looking for.
I think that outlines what I was thinking, so I think we're ready to go.
Mr. Chair, I'll move it.
Oh, you have a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion?
Just a
Commissioner Lancaster?
comment. I'm really glad they can do it by email. As opposed, you can still do it by paper too, but I think the email is really helpful. And I appreciate that. Thank you. All the work that went into this, to everybody who's worked on this. It's not an easy process. And just one other comment. Vance and I were on the AMC board meeting the other day, and they made a shout out to Blue Earth County and said that this proposal is one of the best they've seen, and other counties should look at it to learn from it. So congratulations to everybody who worked on it.
Awesome.
I've
Other
got-
comments?
I've got one question.
Okay.
I notice in the ineligible businesses, we have pond merchandise. We do have a fairly large pond business up on Madison Avenue, Pond America. And I think there's some other pond businesses on, I don't know, we haven't. Why is that put in there?
We saw that in a lot of different county guidelines, so it really kind of just gets at the nature of that business, I guess, is the theory, much like the gambling establishments.
No, I understand the tobacco, I understand the vaping. We have a business that pays taxes for Blue Earth County and City Mankato, and I guess I just don't understand. If they're not eligible, that's fine. I don't understand why we put that in there. And I would, if we don't have a good reason, I would like to make an amendment that we take it out.
Certainly something that the board can do if you wish. We had it in our previous program and we carried it forward to this one.
Yeah, it's been in there since we started, and we're just, with some other language we got from somebody else, so.
Mr. Chair, as I understand it from various people in the community, that there's some predatory lending that could happen there too, which I have concerns about.
Okay. There was probably some good reason why other counties had it in there. Paul or Courtney, do you have anything to add to this conversation, or?
No, they weren't included in the city of Mankato's proposal as well. If you were to include them, they would still have to document a loss.
Okay.
Correct. If you include them, they'd still have to do the same documentation that anybody else does. My only thing is I have nothing for the pawn shop. It's just that, except that there's one in my district, and I'm going, what? They are a tax-paying business, and why aren't they given the same as everybody else in the county? I guess I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I guess I would just soon not change our format that we have, but did you want to make a motion for an amendment, Vance, I guess? I
can make I make a motion for an amendment to take it out of there, but.
Okay. I got a motion to amend this to take out the pawn shops. Is there a second?
I'll second it. I don't quite get, the reason why they're not included.
Got a first and a second, so now we can have our discussion, and I think we've already had the discussion, so we can certainly move into some more discussion. I feel that since it's been out up to now, I think it's just problematic to change it now. We can deal with it later. Commissioner Pat?
I guess I would agree with that. Consistency, I think, is what we want to strive to as we work through this process. Not that we're picking winners or losers, but I think it's important to stay consistent.
Yeah, draw a line.
I would not support the amendment.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I agree with you and Commissioner Pat.
You got some other questions, Mark, or?
I guess I don't quite understand why they weren't included before, but
that was my whole thing, because I just don't understand. I mean, and I appreciate consistency. I appreciate, but this is different than what we had earlier on this summer anyway, so it's not consistent with.
No,
you know,
I don't disagree
so
with that.
It's a whole different program, and we have opened up many things compared to what we did earlier on. I just, you know, in reading through it, and I'm going, wait a minute, that's not right, but.
Yeah, I guess the challenge I have now is changing it right now. If we would have known
All it
about
does
this
is take
three-
one word off them.
Well, but we don't have the information we need. I mean, it would have been nice if staff would have had time to research this a little more. It's just been, kind of been in the program. I would imagine there's some relatively good reasons. We just don't have them in this room at this time. And so I wouldn't support this until we had that data in front of us, so.
Okay.
Okay, we've had discussion. Roll call, Jesse.
Commissioner Pap?
No.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
No.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
No. Motion fails. Okay, now, the amendment has failed. Do you want to finish, any more discussion on the original motion to pass the program? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg?
Aye.
Chair Brunder?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for all your work on this. It was a quick turnaround again. Someday maybe we'll have time to work on these programs, but we are getting through them, and it's good to see the money on the street. And at the end of the day, that's what our goal is. So, thanks, everybody, for your time. Thank you, Courtney and Paul, for all your work. You have a great day. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. We're almost done. And the commissioner reports, which are just riveting. We will move on to the financial status.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 10 in your packet is the financial status report for our end of our fiscal year, December 31st, 2020. Excuse me. You will see that our total revenue for the year was $106,719,000 roughly, against expenses of $101,471,000. So we did end up in a surplus situation. Obviously, the CARES Act funding that did pay for some of our public safety and public health staff costs certainly made a big difference in terms of how we ended up the year. We had anticipated a $1.4 million deficit, so to have a surplus after a very challenging year is, I guess, a good outcome. The things that kind of stood out to me as I reviewed this is our local tax levy did actually exceed our budget by just a 0.1%, but we did ultimately have good collections on our property taxes. Our fees were above projections as well, so that continued. Our transportation sales tax was slightly down from last year, but still exceeded our budget by almost 5%. So, you know, some encouraging signs there. The not so encouraging was the interest on our investments, where we fell way short of our investment expectations, and so, you know, there's some mixed messages within the revenue stream. On the expense side, you know, our public aid assistance was a little bit above budget, so that's a concern as we see more people needing assistance from our Human Services Department. Our personal services, which are really our wages and benefits, we not only saw benefit from our flexible hiring freeze, but our voluntary furloughs that our employees helped us with. So we did see that we came in under budget by almost 5% there. Building equipment purchases was quite a bit over budget. Some of that is the trickle-on effect of the government center project, where we did not budget anything in 2020 for that project, but we did have bills that continued to come in as we closed out some of those contracts, so that had some bearing on that. Also, our investment and the use of the CARES money in terms of our virtual technology and Telework technology also would show up in that line. So overall, again, showing a surplus in a very challenging year is a positive outcome. On the Ponderosa, down in the enterprise fund, you'll see there the total revenues were $3.8 million against expenses of $3.832 million. So a slight deficit on the Ponderosa, but again, we had $1 million of land improvements as well as almost $700,000 of machinery investments, and so it ends up to be, I think, again, a positive story to have that kind of infrastructure investment with just a small deficit compared to our operating revenues. Moving to the second page, then you'll see that our cash balances, our available funds, end up the year at $55.4 million. The state auditor has suggested that county should have between 35 and 50% of our fund balance or our operating budget available, and that number is $54.5 million. So our fund balance is certainly right in line with the guidance from the state auditor. We have a lot of dedicated funds that roll up into a grand total of $118,214,295 in reserves. You'll see that's up a little bit from 2019, obviously with the surplus that we have. Some of that flows to our fund balance bottom line. Be happy to answer any questions that the board has about the financial status report.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I see the law library. Is that all electronic, or are we still using books too?
I believe they've gone to just purchasing the electronic
Okay.
now. We did have books down at our library, but Pat, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've shifted to all electronic law library materials.
I think there might still be one terminal down there. They were going, but we had to change the contract. But otherwise, everything is addressed.
But it's electronic?
Correct.
Yeah. I think that makes good sense. As somebody who used to work for Blethen a million years ago, one of my jobs was putting the inserts in to page 24, page 56.
It gave you patience.
I don't know if it worked.
This is the one category where we do have a deficit in our fund balance, and I know there's been some fee adjustments intended to try and get that back into a positive balance. I think some of the restrictions in court hearings probably is still having some impact on it, but it is one that we'll have to get into a positive balance at some point in the not too distant future.
Thank you.
Other questions on the financials? Seeing none, anything else to bring before the board before we start on our reports, Bob?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. I will start with committee reports then. Colleen, I'm going to let you go first today.
Okay. On the 6th, we had department heads, and then I had a Region 9 commission meeting that night, and lucky me, I'm now on their executive board, too.
Oh, gee whiz.
Yeah. On the 8th...
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. On the 8th, there was an energy forum, and Joe Sullivan talked about the PUC, how it works, what the process is, and that type of thing. It was interesting for someone who doesn't know a lot about how the PUC actually works. I had a Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership Recruitment Committee that day. We're looking for a few people to serve on that board. We've had some people who have termed out. That afternoon, Kevin Papp, Senator Rosen, Wendell Sandy, Mike Hahn, Bob and Josh were on a call with SCSC. It's the old EXU, for lack of a better term. Wendell Sandy runs that. And they wanted to talk about the Vernon Center market. We had a conversation. I'm sure Kevin will be the go-to person for that in the future since it's in his district. But we had the initial conversation about, you know, what opportunities are there out there, and it will, I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future. On the 11th, I had a Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs meeting with NACO, just talking about funding and that type of thing. It appears that with President-elect Biden's proposal, he's supporting dollars to state and local government. That hasn't happened since the first one. There have been promises that they take it up in the future, but it has not happened in the 4 that have happened previously. 12th, we had a work session. The 14th, we had InterGov. I think that went really well. The 15th, we had, Vance and I had the AMC board meeting. I know Vance sent the minutes out, so you've all seen that. And then that afternoon, Josh and I had the equity profile meeting with partners to talk about how we move that forward. And last night, I listened in on the Martin Luther King Community Celebration. That is the end of my report, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Vance?
You bet. After our last meeting, I had a NACO monthly membership meeting. Then the department head meeting on Wednesday. Myself and Commissioner Pifo did a clinic tour, the vaccination clinic on Thursday, the 7th. And that was really interesting. So it was good to see how things are laid out over there in that basement of the government center. We had a work session on the 12th. I had a transportation committee meeting for NACO on the 12th also, and then on the 13th, I had a corrections advisory board meeting followed by a safe roads meeting. And let's say on the 14th, I attended a youth group meeting for District 77 that had legislative Luke Fredericks, Ackland, I think Munson actually did get in there, but I think Nick Friends and also Julie Rosen were all on this call. So it was a good meeting to get noted. In fact, I got a meeting set up with Luke Fredericks on Thursday just because of that meeting, to get better acquainted. Let's see. Where am I? Here we go.
15th.
The 15th, yes, our board of directors meeting for AMC, and you already mentioned that. Thank you. Something I did notice that our Rural Action Caucus meetings are during the same time as our AMC board meetings. So I'm missing the RAC meeting because of AMC board, which I figure is more of a priority at this time. And that was the end of my chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mark?
Oh, okay. Yeah, after the department heads on January 6th, and then you and I had RCF on Thursday the 7th, and took care of things there. And with Vanston on went to the the next door there, the vaccination clinic, and that was quite well laid out and very pristine. That was obviously looked real clean. It was all new. And then we had the work session on the 12th. On the 13th, Kip and I, we had our MICA meeting and introduction of a lot of new members into to our board. Then on the 15th, I did have Mankato, or the 14th, excuse me, Mankato had it's actually kind of a consortium of for affordable housing, including some private groups, the Southwestern Partnership, and of course Partners for Affordable Housing, dealing with trying to come up with places for affordable housing, more of a people that are getting off their feet and getting up, but, trying to increase the number of affordable housing in the Mankato area. Also had 169 corridor, kind of an open house that evening online. And then, of course, on the Friday, the 15th, did have participated in the AMC Board of Directors as, well, I guess as an alternate. Anyway, and that basically concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Kevin?
Well, as mentioned, I participated with the other commissioners at the work sessions, department head meeting. I attended my first SWCD meeting on January 7th, first Transit Advisory Committee meeting on the 14th. I did observe the Planning Commission meeting on the 6th, had conversations and met with staff and others concerning the MFS Farms composting facility at Good Thunder on January 6th, 7th, and 11th, including a site visit to listen and learn a little more about that. As mentioned, Vernon Center Market Fire on January 7th and 8th, discussions and some Ditch 28 conversations in Lincoln Township. Kind of just updating, I will be in new commissioner training tomorrow and Thursday mornings, and have my human services orientation tomorrow afternoon.
Busy. Thank you, Commissioner. And it's so unfortunate you can't go to the newly commissioners in person.
Yeah.
It is just a unique experience. I was lucky enough to go as a newly elected mayor many years ago, and that new commissioner school is it's just fun to see your people that you've gotten on the board with, and you have that, but you'll make the best of it.
But he gets to do it in July. It'll be a little later, so that's good.
This should all pass and you should be able to,
Yeah. Actually, on the AMC board meeting, there are a few commissioners who don't think they need the new commissioner's school.
Yeah, there was
which I
some.
find interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know they were doing it in person. That's awesome.
Well,
that's awesome.
It's virtual
Tomorrow. But then they're
tomorrow.
gonna they'll do something else in July.
But you must have about 3 or 4 sessions.
Oh, nice.
4 virtual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. It's just nice to get that, to meet the people you come on with. It's kind of fun.
It is.
Well, with that, several of the items that I had, work session, department head, soil and water were all mentioned. Micah, intergov, I think I just want to touch on a couple. Planning Commission, you did see most of the items already, but we do have the dog kennel coming up. There's a lot of discussion at the planning and zoning meeting, a lot of information that went through a Board of Adjustments hearing not long before this. And so they tabled it until the 2 commissioners that weren't on the Board of Adjustments, myself and Dusty, can see all the rest of the information and get a chance to get on the site. So we'll be discussing that in February, and then bringing that back to this board in probably end of February. So that one will get some good discussion. A little bit about our RCF program that we had. As you know, Mark and I are in that program. We were funding $50,000 a year to that program. We cut the budget back to $25,000, but not only did we cut the budget back to $25,000, we are going to operate just a little bit differently than we have in the past. We used to just give a lump sum, $50,000, 25 I think at the beginning of the year and 25 at the middle of the year. And our new business plan will be that they have to submit bills to Blue Earth County for the people they're helping in Blue Earth County. And then we'll pay those bills on an hourly basis. We're still kind of working out those details, but we haven't got them done yet. So it'll be a little different model. We support RCEF yet. They're doing a good job, but it's getting to be a little bit larger organization than what it originally started as. And we're going to try to bring that back and get it to be a more personal and Blue Earth County orientated program. So hopefully that'll help us out a little bit, and we'll get a little bit more bang for our buck here in Blue Earth County, I think is what we're looking for. So, and then I think all the rest of them were pretty well touched on already. Yeah, we had good discussion at Intergov about County Road 12 and Adams Street and the roundabout. We still are not sure who's going to pay what, but we are all talking. So we had a good meeting. And that is the end of my report. If there's no other business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Got a first and a second. Go ahead, roll call, please.
Commissioner Pap?
Aye.
Commissioner Pepo.
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer.
Aye.
Commissioner Stuenberg.
Aye.
Chair Brunder.
Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.